Breathing heavily, the hero left a bloody trail in the snow. The icy wind howled around him, bringing with it a piercing cold and despair. He ran through the blizzard with all his might. The snow crunched under his feet, and every movement was painful throughout his body. His face showed anger and incomprehension. He cursed through his teeth, completely unaware of what was going on around him. The cold was unbearable, chilling him to the bone. He rushed forward, frantically trying to figure out what the hell was going on. He stumbled, a sharp pain piercing his shoulder. His thoughts raced in his head. Why was he being chased? Who had he done such a disservice to? Gathering the rest of his will, he sprinted forward again. Speed seemed the only chance he had to escape the unknown enemies in this blizzard. A new blow reached its target, piercing his leg, leaving horrible scarlet stains on the white snow. He collapsed face first into the snowdrift, letting out a long groan of pain. His body was no longer obeying him, the last of his strength almost completely gone. Overcoming the pain, he tried to get up. A mocking voice echoed in his ears, telling him he should have run better. The enemies surrounded him in a tight ring. One of them, grinning crookedly, addressed him, calling him Mr. Yu Baek-jun. Yu Baek-jun looked at his tormentors. There was only one question on his mind. When had things gotten so bad? His thoughts took him back to the recent past. He remembered that fateful day and the bet that had started it all. How foolish. It was all the fault of that message in the game chat. An unknown player offered him a bet, to pass the game in a special way for one wish. He only grinned then, wondering if this desire could make him rich. The proposal seemed very strange and absurd. The guy was completely engrossed in the hero's road game. He sighed heavily after finally completing the walkthrough for Yu Baek-jun. As he looked around, he suddenly noticed that everyone was gone. The same message with the terms of the strange bet was still on the screen. He remembered the plot of the game, the gates that connected the worlds and the terrible monsters that burst out of them, bringing destruction and death. The game was set in our world. Players were hunters fighting monsters. The game was a real hit. The world of the game was huge and detailed. Dangerous adventures and limitless opportunities for development awaited the players. It had 5 different character classes and tons of secrets. Despite being a single-player game, it won over many gamers. However, this popularity did not last long at all. The game turned out to be too difficult. No one could complete it to the very end. It's been a year since its release, but no one has ever gotten over it. 5 playable characters were easily killed off, forcing you to start all over again. The difficulty was simply diabolical. With an average completion rate of 0.1%, the game was inexorably dying. The guy looked at the leaderboard. Other than for the main character, no one was able to pass the game. Only one player had done it for Yu Baek-jun. He stared at the monitor in surprise. The only player who had passed the game for Yu Baek-jun was himself. A message appeared on the screen. The path of heroes is just beginning. The entrance was only available to those who had already finished the game, and he was the only one there. There used to be more than 10 people in the chat room. Has the game really come to an end? Or did everyone move to the new chat room without it? It's kind of sad. Suddenly, a user with the nickname X Supremala Lord XX entered the chat room. The guy was a little surprised to see this system message on his screen. He recognized the person who entered. It was the leader of their chat room, the chief veteran of the game. What did he want in an almost completely empty chat room? Lord was surprised to see someone else in the chat room. He wrote that he thought he had kicked everyone out. The guy didn't understand at all what he was talking about. The stranger ignored his presence, asking where everyone had gone, but he added that if he had made a promise, he would keep it. Then the Lord proposed a wager. The boy wondered. If he passed the game in the special way suggested, would he get the fulfillment of one wish? He wondered skeptically if this Lord could make him rich and handsome, and would he ever seriously fulfill his promise? The Lord wrote that he would think about the consequences of failure when it happened, and asked if the lad wanted to try it. He was very wary. The stranger clarified if he had gone through the game completely before. The guy started typing the answer that, of course, he had played the main character. But then he stopped abruptly. If he told the truth, would everyone find out? And would he miss his one chance to brag about his accomplishment? They say if you're a hardcore gamer for long enough, you'll start looking for attention. It seemed to be true for him at the time. He decided to lie by saying that he passed for everyone except Yu Baek-jun. He was not going to miss this chance to get everyone's attention. The Lord again persisted in asking if he wanted to make a wager. The boy still found him very suspicious, but hesitated no longer for long. In the end, he decided to go along with it. He had nothing to lose, even if it was a trick. He bravely accepted the challenge and immediately received a reply from the Lord, who called him the last and best player. He smirked smugly as he was the only one to finish the game with the last hero, Yu Baek-jun. He was confident in his abilities, so he thought that it didn't matter what path this strange lord would suggest. Suddenly, the image before his eyes began to distort. The screen flickered with static, and then went blank. He stared at the monitor incomprehensibly, unable to say a word. His head swam, and he clutched his temples. What's going on? Why was his head spinning so badly? He felt nauseous. A new message appeared on the distorted screen. It said that this was no longer a game, but his new reality, no matter what happened. The message continued with the ominous words that he had chosen this path himself. He had made his choice by agreeing to that bet. The next moment he found himself in the middle of a snowy field. Dressed in unfamiliar clothes, he looked around in confusion. He looked at his reflection in the ice crust. The face was alien, belonging to a game character. What the hell is this? The vast, snowy desert stretched out all around. Where was he? How had he gotten here? Questions swarmed in his mind, but there were no answers. He ran a hand through the long black hair that fell to his shoulders. Was it really his hair? It was different. He was in complete shock. Since when did his hair get so long? He looked just like Yu Baek-jun from the game. Dark figures appeared in the distance, coming toward him. They were led by a man whose face seemed vaguely familiar to him from the game. The man stepped closer and smiled. He recognized him. It was one of the characters who addressed him as Mr. Baek-jun. His breath caught. Shin Woo-hyun, one of the characters in the game, was standing in front of him. Could it be that he was sleeping and having some strange dream? He couldn't believe his eyes. Why is he looking directly at the character in the game? The one confirmed that he was Shin Woo-hyun, his teacher. The teacher smiled slyly and reminded me that they had agreed to practice today. It all seemed so unreal. Even Shin Woo-hyun's lines were exactly like in the game. He suddenly became serious and said that he was sorry, but he had no choice. The expression on the teacher's face changed dramatically, becoming cold and threatening. He warned that the training would be harsher than he thought, because as it turned out, his older brother wanted him dead. The words came out of the blue, shocking him. Before he knew it, the teacher had struck. A sharp pain pierced his shoulder, and scarlet blood splattered on his white clothes. Teacher Shin Woo-hyun was surprised to note that he was aiming straight for the heart. He didn't expect Yu Baek-jun to dodge the blow so deftly. He added that even though Baek-jun was weak physically, he had the blood of a holy sword in his veins. But his end is a foregone conclusion, and to live on is a disgrace to the clan. Shin Woo-hyun stated that he would kill him right there for his own good. As a sign of respect, as his trainer, he promised a quick and painless death. The guy whined as he realized that this was all happening in earnest. This wasn't a game or a dream. But how was this even possible? It was incomprehensible. He sharply pushed the unnecessary thoughts away. Now was not the time to wonder how he'd gotten here. He had to act now to survive. The stakes were extremely high. If he failed now, he would simply die. His enemies surrounded him, leaving no chance for error. He sighed convulsively, trying to calm himself. Panic was overwhelming him, but he knew he had to keep his cool at all costs. The pain from the wound was hellish. He could feel the warm blood trickling down his arm, making what was happening even more frighteningly real. This was definitely not a dream. He looked around in horror, frantically wondering what the hell was going on and what the hell he was doing here. This is a nightmare. The very same message came to mind. This is no longer a game. It's about to become your reality. His eyes widened with horror. One last message before passing out. Long hair. He looked at his hands, at his clothes, realizing the terrible truth of what was happening. This situation where he was being chased by Shin Woo-hyun, it all came together into one horrifying picture that made my blood run cold. Could it be? Had he really become Yu Baek-jun, the character in that game? This thought seemed completely insane. He didn't know what had happened, but one thing was clear. The most important thing now was to survive. He had played this game countless times. It was urgent to remember. He had to remember all the times he had challenged the game by controlling Yu Baek-jun, the hero, the beginning of his journey. He looked at Shin Woo-hyun and his men standing in front of him. The first step in the game was always the same. The only true course of action in this situation was to run. run as fast as he could without looking back for a second. He took off, leaving bloody footprints in the snow. The teacher's mocking voice followed him, telling him to run better. Shin Woo-hyun shouted that Baek Jun would be doing everyone a favor if he just died quietly. He asked if the other man was okay with it. Gasping for breath, Baek Jun rushed forward. Just a little more. Just a little more. He had to hold on, to find a way to turn the situation around. The teacher gloatingly promised that Baek Jun would not be alone in the afterlife. He was going to kill all his servants after him. Shin Woo-hyun mockingly asked if his former student had any last words he wanted to say. One of his handmaidens suddenly noticed that the blizzard around them had suddenly become noticeably stronger. The snow fell thicker and the wind increased. Baek Jun interjected about the last words, gathering some strange energy in his hand, preparing for something completely unexpected. Shin Woo-hyun waited patiently for an answer. Baek Jun looked him in the eyes and briefly threw that these were his last words he would say. He boldly sent his teacher away, calling him a loser. Shin Woo-hyun was stunned at the insolence, unable to believe his ears. In the same instant, a huge black wolf with burning eyes clawed at the teacher's shoulder. The teacher was shocked and asked what Baek Jun had said. Repeating the insult, Baek Jun watched as his former mentor tried to deal with the ferocious beast that attacked him. The wolf continued to torment the teacher, who could hardly believe what was happening. What had Baek Jun just allowed himself to say to him? Shin Woo-hyun struggled to fight back after recognizing the ice wolf. He assumed that their loud cries had attracted the attention of the dangerous predator. The wolf immediately switched to the teacher's men. Baek Jun, to everyone's surprise, rushed at the beast with a shout, hitting it with his fist. Shin Woo-hyun gloomily thought about how ridiculous it was to be scared of some pack of ice wolves. It was beneath his dignity. While Baek Jun fought off one wolf, the teacher indifferently decided that most of his men were useless for the future anyway. Several more wolves jumped out of the forest. Shin Woo-hyun thought irritably that he was getting tired of these beasts. He decided that he needed to deal with this wolf pack quickly before they caused more unnecessary problems for his squad. However, before that, he decided that it was still worth it to finally deal with Baek Jun. Revenge for the insult was more important. The teacher turned toward Baek Jun, ignoring the wolves, and prepared to deliver a decisive blow. The snow swirled around his figure. There was a thud, and a small crater formed in the snow. Someone had obviously been hit hard and had flown off to the side. It was Baek Jun. He was curled up on the ground, clutching his stomach. The pain was intense, and he could hardly breathe from the blow he had received. The boy hissed in pain, trying to figure out what was wrong. Had he mixed the wrong herbs? Something inside him wasn't working right. He grimaced, gritting his teeth against the pain that pierced his entire body. Damn it, it was unbearable to endure this horrible pain. Suddenly, a system message flashed before his eyes. The status window notified that he had created a new ointment thanks to skills. The boy stared at the window in surprise. Another message popped up. He had just used an unnamed ointment. The system continued to inform. His wounds were healing and he was temporarily becoming highly resistant to the piercing cold. He looked at his leg. The deep wound was indeed healing right before his eyes, emitting a faint golden glow. With relief, he exhaled. He had mixed the herbs he had found correctly after all. It made sense, gave him some hope. He might not remember the other hero's paths thoroughly, but Baek Jun's route he would never forget. He had learned it too well. The guy spent 2 whole years completely playing the game as this character, and now he's totally screwed in his body. Either way, he was in a terrible position. Why did fate throw him into the body of Baek Jun, the most complicated hero? He recalled the backstory of the Holy Sword clan. The clan was founded by the god of war who resolved the gate incident in time immemorial. The god of war disappeared, but the clan grew rapidly thanks to the books he left behind, becoming very influential and authoritative in Korea. And one of the 5 children who had the right of inheritance in this powerful family was him, Baek Jun. It's ironic. The complexity of what was going on was far greater than what was in the game. He sighed, recognizing that things were much more serious now. Thanks to a homemade herbal ointment, he was saved from blood loss and death by cold. But the effect will only last 30 minutes at most. It was urgent to think. There was very little time left, and every decision he made could fatally affect his fate. He strained his memory. Just now, he'd seen some kind of message, like a game notification, right before he'd passed out. This meant that the hero's path system familiar from the game still existed and worked here. He mentally called up the status window. A translucent window familiar from the game interface immediately materialized in front of him. The system had indeed responded to the call. The status window showed his name, Yu Baek-jun. Strength, dexterity, endurance, mana. All the characteristics were at the lowest F rank. He had no idea that lives depended on those characteristics. It sucked. In this world, he was a ragamuffin and a complete non-entity. His situation was aggravated by the fact that Yu Baek-jun's journey began with a fatal wound. If he lost his guard, he would die. He had gained some time thanks to the Ice Wolf's attack, but he realized that Shin Woo-hyun couldn't be stopped or broken by it for long. The teacher possessed a tracking artifact, so finding him was only a matter of time. The advantage was clearly not on his side. Besides, his skills were the worst possible, and he had absolutely nothing useful for survival on him. He was desperately trying to figure out what he should do right now to survive this unthinkable, deadly situation. And looking ahead, how could he even stay alive for the rest of Yu Baek-jun's journey? There was only one obvious answer: the Forest of Labyrinths. He knew from the game that there must be an exit there, his only chance of escape from his pursuers. He ran for it. Meanwhile, Shin Woo-hyun and his men made their way to the site of the recent fight, examining the bloody footprints in the snow left by the wolves and him. One of the subordinates reported to the teacher that the magical tracking artifact had activated, indicating the fugitive's future path. Shin Woo-hyun clutched the glowing amulet in his hand. Calling Baek-jun a rat, he vowed that he would catch and kill him for sure this time. The amulet indicated the direction. The teacher confirmed that the fugitive was heading for the labyrinth forest. There was no choice but to follow him. He ordered his men to prepare to risk their lives. The entrance to the labyrinth forest was dangerous for everyone, but orders must be obeyed. Shin Woo-hyun understood the necessity of this risk. He needed to be recognized by the clan elders in order to get the high position he wanted. Yu Baek-jun ran through the snow. He remembered the world of Path of Heroes. Monsters are the enemies of mankind who are exterminated by hunters. There were different categories of gates and monsters: easy, challenging, difficult. The difficulty varied greatly from place to place. However, one area absolutely all hunters found too hard and always avoided. It was considered the most dangerous area in the game. He stopped abruptly at the tree. She was here. A huge white snake with blue eyes raised its head, looking straight at him. It was Mount Sorak. Yu Baek-jun thought that there was no greater hell on earth than this cursed and deadly place. The monsters here created their own ecosystem, living like wild beasts. This inaccessible mountainous terrain became a place that everyone avoided. Obviously, the current weakling Yu Baek-jun shouldn't have come here without a guard, but how did he end up on this mountain in the first place? He remembered Shin Woo-hyun's teacher. He had taught Yu Baek-jun since he was a child, but had betrayed him by supporting his ambitious brothers. It was Shin Woo-hyun who was ordered to kill Yu Baek-jun while his brothers were away from home. He brought him high up to Mount Sorak to do so. In other words, the standard survival path for the player at the beginning of the game as Yu Baek-jun is to escape the snowy slopes and return home. However, Yu Baek-jun stopped abruptly. He stopped running away from the danger, holding his breath and looking around in the forest. He had found what he was looking for. The reason he had wandered here on Mount Sorak instead of trying to return to the clan had been found. It was the secret of Mount Sorak. There was a secret place here, high in the Forest of Labyrinths, that absolutely no one knew about. There lurked a hidden opportunity, a special power. An ancient stone stele warned, "Leave this place for those who have no courage." At this moment, Shin Woo-hyun and his men were just approaching this very stele, chasing the fugitive in the footsteps he had left behind. One of his subordinates anxiously asked if they would really enter the labyrinth forest, recalling that many had died here. The teacher replied that they don't need to worry about the forest because they have the artifact from the elder, but he needed to prove Baek-jun's death. He frowned. Something about all this was bugging him, confusing him, causing an uneasy feeling deep inside him. He was worried about Baek-jun's recent behavior. Since when had he become so bold and daring? He had never been like this before. It was completely different from the Yu Baek-jun he knew. It was as if a completely different person had appeared in front of him. He replayed the moment of the fight with the wolf in his mind again. Where did the ever-timid and weak Baek-jun get such desperate courage? Yes, there was no doubt that his former student had changed beyond recognition. It was as if someone else had taken over his body and was controlling him. Shin Woo-hyun turned around abruptly, noticing something in the snow. He realized that the fugitive was still moving. He hadn't stopped here for long. The footprints were still fresh, not covered by the blizzard. So Baek-jun had been here recently and couldn't have gotten far with his injury. He ordered his men to immediately pursue and destroy the fugitive. The chase was entering its decisive, most dangerous stage. Shin Woo-hyun's squad rushed forward, following their teacher in Yoo Baek-jun's footsteps, going deeper into the ominous labyrinth forest. The same subordinate approached the teacher again, saying that they felt as if they were walking in circles. She questioned whether she was on the right path. Shin Woo-hyun abruptly cut his subordinate short, coldly asking if she had forgotten where they were at the moment. The girl looked at him confusedly, completely unaware of what he was talking about or what he was getting at with his strange question. She continued to run after him, looking around tensely, trying to make sense of his cryptic words in the midst of the chase. After a bit of silence, she reminded the teacher that they were in the forest of labyrinths, known for its tangles and deadly traps. The teacher explained that in this forest, you can't be sure if you're walking the right way or just going around in circles like that dead man. Such was the insidious nature of this labyrinth. He warned her not to let her guard down if she didn't want to wander here until she died. Meanwhile, Yoo Baek-jun was running through the forest with his last strength. He felt that he was about to die and realized how amazing those herbs were. But what was more important now was the strange feeling that suddenly swept over him, a sense of something familiar and important. He was instinctively aware of this feeling. It was deep inside him. He looked at the bloody trail he'd left in the snow. He could really die here. The realization of his own mortality in this alien world hit him with a new, terrifying force. He mentally berated that bastard Supreme Lord. He should have warned him in advance about such a deadly betting risk. He had clearly been tricked, but above all, it was his own choice to agree to that strange, dangerous deal. Then again, what did it matter now? He'd lied to Lord himself that he hadn't gone through the game for all the characters. He felt that his strength was leaving him. His stamina was at its limit, and every step was a tremendous, inhuman effort. He looked around, breathing heavily. The very place he was looking for had to be here somewhere, very near. He could feel it. Suddenly, a sly smile lit up his face. He'd found it, that secret place from the game, his only chance for salvation. He stood at the edge of a cliff. It was the end of the maze, a dead end that had driven many a player mad in his past world. He remembered the first time he'd gotten here in the game, feeling nothing but despair. Each time, the way out had been nothing but a cliff. At the time, he thought he had just wasted his time, but now the experience was proving invaluable. He needed to stay focused. He gathered his wits, looked down at the snow-covered cliffs. It was time to act before his pursuers caught up with him. Suddenly, there was a fierce shout from Shin Woo-hyun's teacher calling his name. Yoo Baek-jun! He and his men finally caught up with the fugitive. The teacher grinned wryly, noting that he had managed to run all the way to the edge of the cliff. He looked quite smug. Yoo Baek-jun thought ironically that his former mentor had even stopped addressing him respectfully as his master. Shin Woo-hyun mockingly asked if after all that running, he came running to the cliff, declaring that his resistance was over. Yoo Baek-jun cried out in despair, asking why the teacher was doing this to him. Had he really become Elder Yoo Dae-ran's loyal dog? Shin Woo-hyun only grinned back, wondering with a sneer if his former student had only realized it now. It's about time. He confirmed that he had decided to support Mr. Yoo Dae-ran, whose strength truly matched the greatness of the Holy Sword Clan. Yoo Baek-jun thought he had a premonition. He had purposely tried to get a reaction from the teacher, and now he was sure. It was just like a game. Now that he had confirmed it, it was dangerous to waste any more time. We had to act quickly before the situation became completely hopeless. He felt his body stiffen. If he waited any longer, he would freeze to death in this icy wasteland. His vision blurred, and he staggered, barely able to stand. His hands were already starting to turn blue from the piercing, deadly cold. The boy swore through his teeth. It was becoming clear that the problem was far more than just the risk of frostbite and hypothermia. Blood oozed from his wound again, staining the snow scarlet. At this rate, he would die primarily from blood loss, not from the cold. Shin Woo-hyun noticed his condition and said that this whole conversation was taking too long. The fugitive would die before he could strike. The teacher bared his sword, shrouded in a turquoise glow. He offered to end it all instantly as a final act of mercy. Yoo Baek-jun sarcastically muttered, "What a courtesy." But since this was the end, he decided to say one last thing to his teacher. He pointed at Shin Woo-hyun's neck, mentioning the tracking artifact he wore. The teacher stared back at him incomprehensibly. With a sly smile, Yoo Baek-jun informed his pursuer that this artifact was disposable, calling him an idiot for last. Shin Woo-hyun roared with rage and the realization of his mistake, shouting the fugitive's name again, But it was too late to change anything. Without wasting a second, Yu Baekjun turned around and jumped down the cliff into the unknown, leaving behind only a splash of scarlet blood. Yu Baekjun let out a death scream as he fell from a great height. The pain from the wounds and the impact with the rocks was unbearable. Unbearable. One of the underlings tentatively suggested, looking down, that their target was likely dead after such a fall off a cliff. There was no chance of that. Shin Woo-hyun decided to go back. They wouldn't get the body, but he hoped that Mr. Yu De-ran would believe him even without proof. He looked at the now useless tracking artifact he clutched in his hand. Yu Baekjun hadn't lied, it was disposable. His men looked down at the snow-covered rocks in confusion. The teacher tried again to activate the amulet, but in vain, it was silent. Why won't it activate? Shin Woo-hyun stared at the useless piece of metal in panic, his eyes widening at the unpleasant realization. No way! Was Yu Baekjun really telling the truth? That thought hit him like a blow to the head. He had fallen for the boy's trick. Suddenly, a snarling sound came from behind the rocks. The ugly monster sniffed, muttering that he could smell human blood very close by. A whole crowd of creepy, goblin-like creatures appeared from the blizzard, attracted by the smell of blood. They surrounded Shin Woo-hyun's squad. Meanwhile, Yu Baekjun, who had miraculously survived the fall, coughed up blood. He was alive, but he was seriously injured and lay on the snow, almost exhausted. Above him hovered a golden glowing object that looked like an ancient book. He reached for it with the last of his strength, trying to reach it. Something had to be done. He could feel the life draining out of him, his consciousness beginning to fade slowly. More like, he forced himself to focus, overcoming the hellish pain and weakness. He needed to recover as quickly as possible. He lay on the cold ground, bleeding. Recover. It was the only thought bouncing around in his fading mind. Suddenly, system messages flashed before his eyes. The War God book confirmed his qualifications and bloodline. There is hope. New reports followed. The book confirmed his physical characteristics, calling him a man of zero talent. That's a shame. Yu Baekjun was enveloped in a bright golden glow, and he soared above the ground. New system message windows appeared around him. The system informed him of the forced awakening of the dormant blood of the god of war through this very system. There's a chance. The text on one of the windows stated that whoever opened this book was most likely one of the descendants of the god of war. The image of an ancient bearded warrior flashed before his mind. It was the god of war himself, as he had been while he was alive. In his vision, the god of war explained that he strived to capture all the martial techniques that existed in this world, dedicating his entire life to it. But on the slope of years, feeling the end of his journey approaching, the legendary warrior thought about the future of his legacy and his descendants. He decided to leave behind this book, in which he gathered all his knowledge and wisdom so that it would be inherited by his descendants. Even after his death, as he willed, this book was to continue to record the new martial arts emerging in the world. The god of war asked him to use this book only for good, to bring justice and protect the weak with its help. Yu Baekjun felt a deep connection with his ancestor. He mentally turned to him, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He looked at his hands, feeling the new strength, and mentally swore to his great ancestor that he would only use the book for honorable deeds. Suddenly, a system message appeared. He had obtained the unique ability, War God Book, and the specialty, Heavenly Martial Body. The next notification stated that all of his characteristics had been greatly enhanced due to the unique gifts he had just received. His status window had been updated. All of his base stats had risen to rank C, and War God Book and Heavenly Body had appeared on the list. He rose to his feet, fully healed and full of strength. The ancient book of the god of war glowed softly in his hands, radiating power. The boy smiled in relief. His body had fully recovered from the fall and wounds, so the power of the book had really worked. He noticed that his overall rank had increased, but more importantly, he had gotten something much more valuable than just a stat boost. He realized that he had acquired a powerful, unique ability and trait that could completely change his destiny in this world. He remembered that there was no level system in the Path of Heroes game. Everything was earned through grind. Features, qualifications, skills. Yu Baekjun's path was one of the hardest in the game, known for its extreme difficulty. The only way to pass it was to gain unique powers. He looked at his status again, at the titles of his new acquisitions, War God Book X and Heavenly Martial Body S. They were the reason he had come this far, risking his life in this dangerous place. The bet had been made. He'd won the prize. The first specialty he had to learn was the Heavenly Combat Body, S. It was a talent granted by the heavens. This feature increased the speed of character growth and skill learning, and periodically unlocked access to new skills. This trait further strengthened his strength. Yu Baek-jun realized that this was simply an invincible ability that would contribute greatly to his growth. Finally, he turned his attention to a unique ability, the War God Book. The status window detailed its incredible capabilities. Unique abilities were special powers that only one person in the entire world could possess. They gave an incredible advantage. They could not be transferred through training or exchange. No one else could study or copy them. His ability was extremely powerful. All newly created battle techniques, including those that had never existed before, were automatically recorded in the book. Any skill could be learned. The book's capabilities were not limited to just martial arts, whether it was a standard technique or even some fantasy technique. If a technique was used in battle, it could be studied with the War God Book. This opened up simply limitless possibilities. He slightly regretted that it was impossible to directly learn magic or alchemy through the book, but immediately touched its interface with his finger. However, he realized that there were probably other ways to learn such specific things. A book wasn't the only solution. The first thing he decided to do was to deal with the skill points he realized he had obtained, along with awakening the power of the War God Book. Since he had gotten the points, he needed to look at them. The system showed 100 available points and the option to accept a new assignment. He looked over the list of techniques available to learn. Triple sword, bash, charge, spear wielding, but all of them were useless right now. He didn't need sword techniques at the moment. In his current weakened state, any battle was tantamount to suicide. However, as he scrolled further down the list, he found what he was looking for. Something that could help him survive right now, in his situation. This is it. Moving technique was a martial art that made the body light. It improved speed, agility, and reflexes, making movements swift. He thought that movement techniques were a basic skill that would come in handy in both fleeing and fighting. The skill was good for all occasions. And since the War God Book had increased his overall skill, he could do some interesting things with this movement technique. Now, having sorted out the skill, he had only one important thing left to do. Choose a new task from the list offered by the system. The system offered two options. Catch me if you can, and pardon my ancestor, help me become a righteous bandit. He decided to postpone the first task until later, marking it as Catch Me. What he needed to pay attention to now was this. He thought the title of the second assignment was pretty lame, but it seemed like the only reasonable choice in his situation. The young man read the title again. Pardon me, my ancestor, please help me become a righteous bandit just for today. This assignment opened up a complicated path like a confusing maze. A reward awaited him at the end, if he could find his way out. In essence, it was a reward for successfully finding the war god's tomb. He grinned, arrogantly thinking it would be easy. By the way, he wondered how his former teacher Shin Woo-hyun was doing. Shin Woo-hyun had better run away right now. At this time, Shin Woo-hyun and his few survivors were surrounded by creepy blue-skinned monsters with burning scarlet eyes. Shin Woo-hyun climbed a tall tree in a panic, trying to escape the ferocious mountain monsters that suddenly attacked them. A huge worm-like monster with a gaping maw pounced on one of his men, leaving him no chance of survival. Yu Baek-jun, meanwhile, thought that his teacher must have already managed to escape from the labyrinth forest, saving his miserable skin. But getting out of this cursed forest was not at all easy. He bent down, picking up some strange plants from the ground. He sat down, cross-legged, and spread the collected herbs in front of him. Did he have everything he needed for his next move? Among them were sun root, fire spirit root, and even the rarest fire ginseng, very valuable ingredients for alchemy. Well done. It looked like he had managed to gather all the necessary components for what he had in mind. He smiled with satisfaction at his findings. Now all that remained was to open the very chest he had discovered in the tomb and finally complete this strange ancestor's task. He lifted the heavy lid of the chest with effort. Inside was a 1,000-year-old snow ginseng and a small pouch that emitted a glow. The system immediately notified him that he had received a valuable reward. 1,000-year snow ginseng and treasure keeper's pouch. The mission was completed. As a reward, he received 500 points and something called the Black Demon. The tomb began to collapse. The platform beneath him began to dissolve into a golden light. The system was ordering him to return to the surface immediately. Honestly, when you think about it that way, there was a certain amount of adventurous romance inherent in the old hero stories in all of this. A tomb under the roof? Wasn't that one of the classic cliches of the wuxia genre? However, it perfectly matched the image of the god of war. The only problem was that the secret heritage was always hidden in ridiculous and dangerous places like this cursed forest of labyrinths. Still, he supposed it was fair. The more difficulties encountered on the way, the better and more valuable was the final reward. He thanked his ancestor for the items and felt a new robe rest on his shoulders, the very same Black Demon Award. The status window described the A-rank mantle. Incredibly durable, with demonic appearance and adaptability, increasing defense and survivability. A bright flash of turquoise light burst from the crumbling tomb, carrying him away from this hidden place to the surface of the mountain. He found himself not far from the Holy Sword clan's observation post, located at the main gate leading into the clan's territory. Inside the post, a young servant named Choi Seung-min was playing a game on a tablet when someone called out to him, saying that the Ramyun was ready. On the tablet screen, a battle between a pixel hero and a huge monster was going on. The servant was completely absorbed in his retro game at this moment. Suddenly, he turned around sharply at the strange sound at the window. What was that other pattern? Something was wrong. It seemed abnormal to him. Behind the bars of the window, he saw a dark figure with burning eyes. A monster? No, wait, it was Mr. Yu Baek-jun. He recognized him. The stranger outside the window coldly ordered the servant to bring Choi Seung-min. He asked the servant in confusion, unable to hear or believe his ears. The figure outside the window repeated the order more harshly, calling the servant a bastard. Choi Seung-min froze in horror as he looked at his changed master. The young man remembered running through the snow, wounded and desperate, chased by his own teacher and his men. A trail of blood followed him across the white snow, reminding him of the deadly danger he had miraculously escaped a short time ago. Someone in the room worriedly asked if they thought Yu Baek-jun would even wake up after everything that happened to him up there on the mountain. Another voice replied that he had been sleeping rough for the 5th day in a row. His condition remained steadily severe with no change. The elderly man, the clan healer, advised the young man not to be so impatient and to wait a little longer, time would tell. Healer Chu Jun-won explained that the reason for his condition was not due to an injury as they might have thought. It was more complicated than that. Choi Seung-min's servant asked the healer thoughtfully, "What was the matter then, if the cause was not the wound received on Mount Sorak?" The healer shook his head, examining the sleeping man. He wasn't sure what had happened, but there were no wounds on his body, and he looked healthier than before. The healer assumed that Yu Baek-jun must have been having a nightmare. Suddenly, the sleeping man opened his eyes with a sudden look of terror and panic. He jumped up from the bed with a loud scream, scaring the healer Chu Jun-won and the young servant Choi Seung-min who were nearby. The servant exclaimed joyfully that the young master was awake at last. The healer, too, expressed his sincere relief at this. Yu Baek-jun looked around confusedly. Was this really a dream within a dream? He was completely unaware of what was going on around him. He looked at the healer and the servant in panic. "Don't tell me." A terrible hunch began to slowly creep into his mind. The boy ran to the window and threw it open with a shriek, gazing out at the view behind him, trying to realize the reality around him. Outside in the clan courtyard, a multitude of warriors were practicing diligently, their commander shouting orders, "Faster, accurate!" Everything was real. The 2 warriors nearby were discussing where they would go next. It seemed that this time, they were heading to the B-rank gate in the western region. One of them mentioned that we should prepare before something came out of the mountainous area. A premonition of trouble was in the air. Yu Baek-jun recoiled from the window, completely disoriented. "Where is he?" The question echoed in his confused mind. Healer Chu Jun-won calmly replied that he was in the Holy Sword clan. The young man interjected, and, waiting for the continuation, the old man added that he was in his own home, pointing to the majestic main clan building visible in the distance. The boy stared at the healer in shock, unable to believe what he had heard. His eyes opened wide in amazement and disbelief. So it wasn't a dream after all. The healer noticed his condition and added sympathetically that he seemed to be very disoriented after the dream. The doctor asked if he had any pain. The young man rubbed his temples, admitting that he had a slight headache from all this. The healer decided that he needed medicine and went to fetch it. Choi Seung-min immediately offered to bring his master some food. Yu Baek-jun called out to the servant, stopping him. He turned around in surprise, asking if the master needed anything else right now. The boy asked what day it was. The servant replied that the master had slept for 4 days, so today was the 15th day of the month. Then he asked the following question. "What year is it?" Choi Seung-min cheerfully reported that it was January of the year 2035. The servant promised to bring food immediately and ran out of the room. Yoo Baek-jun was left alone, trying to make sense of the shocking information. Right. He looked at the system window that appeared in front of him, confirming his guess about the reality of what was happening around him. The system reported that the Catch Me If You Can task had been completed and 100 points had been awarded. There was no way this could have been a dream. He breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that he had just made it home safely to his room, just as he had originally planned. The boy looked thoughtfully at the servant who had brought him the food and was now standing modestly by the door, waiting for further orders. He began to eat, cutting off a piece of juicy meat. But his mind was on something else. What would he do in this new reality? He had returned home, just as he had wanted. But this place, the Holy Sword Clan, was no safer than those icy, snowy plains outside. After all, it was an annex to the main estate of the Holy Sword Clan, where many fought for supremacy, not shying away from dirty methods. Children from powerful clans have always fought for power. It was the eternal epicenter of intrigue, conflict, and cruel betrayals. The main contender for power was Yoo Dae-ran, the eldest son of the current clan patriarch, a ruthless and ambitious young warrior. Besides him, there were other heirs: eldest daughter Yoo Jung-young, third son Yoo Kang-ho, and fourth daughter Yoo Min, and someone else. There was also himself, Yoo Baek-jun, the youngest child in the family, considered weak and useless by all the other members of this clan. There used to be 3 other children in the family, but they were killed at the will of the cruel Yoo Dae-ran. It's just a power struggle, nothing personal. It was logical to assume that Yoo Dae-ran would be the next heir. He would most likely lead the clan in the future. The bright Yoo Kang-ho had already teamed up with his older brother. Yoo Jung-young was almost desperate, and Yoo Min wasn't interested in the power struggle at all. But then why did Yoo Dae-ran kill his 3 younger siblings if they posed no real threat to him? Apparently all because of their favorite older brother. He was capable of any cruelty to achieve his selfish goals. Yoo Dae-ran was always vigilant not to miss any possible danger, eliminating any potential threat in advance. For him, the inheritance dispute ended here and now. He was ready to destroy anyone who stood in his way of power. Yoo Dae-ran was the master of all this chaos. He didn't leave anyone even a chance, and coalitions against him were out of the question. In other words, his ruthless older brother Yoo Dae-ran sought absolute unlimited power in the Holy Sword Clan. He noted thoughtfully to himself that the food was indeed delicious, simultaneously digesting both the food and the disturbing thoughts of his situation. Summarizing the disappointing outcome, he concluded that the main villain in his path would be precisely Yoo Dae-ran, his ruthless older brother. Today was January 15th, 2035, the same date as the game that started Yoo Baek-jun's journey. He remembered a key moment in the story. 2 years later, his father, Yoo Moo-hak, was to pass the throne of the clan patriarch Yoo Dae-ran. And if he does nothing against his older brother before that fateful moment, he will use all his power to kill him. The young man realized that he had only 2 years to spare. He thanked Choi Seung-min for bringing the food and gestured for the dishes to be put away. The young man knew that his older brother would be back soon. Yoo Dae-ran was currently absent, dealing with some problems at the gate on Mount Sorak, but was due back in exactly 2 months. The young man grabbed his treasure pouch and headed for the exit, announcing that he would be back soon. The servant protested, reminding him of his wounds. But the young man was adamant in his decision. He was determined to become as strong as possible before Yoo Dae-ran returned. In this cruel family, only the strongest could rule. That was the unspoken law of the Holy Sword Clan, where weakness was equal to death. In other words, if he managed to become strong enough, the clan would be forced to recognize him. It was the only way to survive. Fortunately, the Holy Sword Clan had enough opportunities for development. He resolutely walked out of his room, heading towards a known goal. He walked to the door labeled Healer's Room. There were many great teachers in the clan, and the healer was one of them, albeit indirectly. But first, he had to take the first step himself. He grasped the doorknob with determination, ready to begin his journey to find his power. He found Healer Chujun-won on the 2nd floor, diligently grinding some herbs in a mortar. The old man looked up at him in surprise. The young man politely apologized for intruding without permission and began to explain that the first thing to be done to build up the force quickly. He explained that he had gone up to the 2nd floor because he couldn't find a healer downstairs, and with a smile, he moved on to his real purpose for the visit. He asked the healer for permission to observe his work, adding that he needed it to become a healer's apprentice. The healer was quite surprised by such a request. The young man confirmed his intention, explaining that he was very interested in his current condition. Healer Chu Jun-won was completely confused, looking incomprehensibly at young Master Yu Baek-jun and his strange request. The young man recalled the information about the healer. Chu Jun-won had worked for the clan under the past head, was extremely gifted, and loved his work. The old man was not involved in the clan's power struggle. The only thing he really cared about was collecting herbs and producing medicines. Chu Jun-won had spent his entire life learning the medicinal arts and wanted to pass it on to the people of the clan. But he needed a worthy disciple with a reason. He was devoted to the clan to the core. The problem was that none of the young warriors wanted to be trained as healers. No one wanted to spend time studying medicines when they could just buy them. As a result, Chu Jun-won never had a student. However, Yu Baek-jun thought that if he got his hands on the very elixir that could make him many times stronger, in order to do so, he vitally needed pharmacist Chu Jun-won's oriental medicine-making skill. He looked at the glowing pouch. The old healer meanwhile sighed, saying that creating this new medicine had taken him much longer than he had planned. He apologized to the young man for his slowness, citing that his body had weakened with age and it was difficult for him to be expeditious. Yu Baek-jun politely replied that it was nothing. The healer grinned and asked if the young master was interested in herbalism. The young man confirmed with a radiant smile that yes, he was indeed very interested in herbalism and everything related to it. He added that he had actually studied it himself from books. The healer sniffed in surprise, noticing the young man's scent. The young man immediately identified the smell as a combination of peaceful herb and sleepy flower, assuming the medicine was to help with headaches. He thought that becoming Chu Jun-won's disciple wasn't difficult. He only needed to demonstrate his profound knowledge of medicines. The healer was amazed, asking if the young man could determine the composition of the medicine by his sense of smell alone. It seemed incredible. The young man confirmed, explaining that books did not provide all the knowledge. So he sourced and tasted the herbs himself, memorizing their smells. He added that he could smell another strange aroma. Oh, they were screaming herbs. He noted that they were very poisonous in nature. Chu Jun-won nervously confirmed that he was right, explaining that he had added them for a specific reason despite their poisonous properties. The old man explained that although the herbs are poisonous, if you burn them after removing the poison, they turn into a remedy that restores a lot of energy. The healer was shocked to the core. What a shame that the young master's talent was not in martial arts, but in medicine. The healer regretfully thought that if only this young man wasn't the heir of the Holy Sword clan, he would have made a great healer. Yu Baek-jun asked if Choi Sung-min had told him how he ended up in such a state. The healer replied that he had heard about the monster attack. The guy realized that the old man wasn't aware of the assassination attempt by Shin Woo-hyun. The official version sounded completely different. The young man said that this incident had made him feel the importance of medicine more than ever before. The healer nodded to him. He added how unfortunate it was that he hadn't had a chance to study them properly before, and now he needed to study much harder. Chu Jun-won looked at the young man hopefully and asked if he would like to learn healing from him, since he was willing to do so. Yu Baek-jun made a surprised face, clarifying whether the doctor was referring to learning from him, pharmacist Chu Jun-won, the Grand Master. He added that the healer must be very busy with his business. The old man laughed and replied that he was not that busy. Chu Jun-won enthusiastically stated that if it was young Master Yu Baek-jung that he was going to train, he was willing to put any business aside. The healer confirmed his intention, saying that he would see how much the young man already knew. He replied that it was a great honor for him. The old man modestly countered that it was an honor to be able to teach the young master. He finished the medicine and offered to take it. A system message appeared. He had become a disciple of the pharmacist Chu Jun-won. The system advised to show knowledge to acquire expertise. Now he had to pass the test given by the old man. He thought that if he just came to him a few times, he could learn the skill. Chu Jun-won could definitely be trusted. He had no lust for power, unlike the traitorous Shin Woo-hyun, which was good. The same could be said for Choi Sung-min's loyal servant. He was indebted to him for saving his family. Due to his lack of talent for martial arts, Sung-min has been performing servant duties for the past few years. He would never betray him. That was enough for the moment. He looked at the system window, wondering what he should do next. The system gave him a new assignment. First steps to get rid of the bony body. He had to run for at least 5 hours. The young man sighed heavily, clutching his head. He realized that the future would be one of suffering and hardship. Choi Seung-min asked in shock, was his master really going to start training? This was completely unthinkable to him. Yu Baek-jun, while tying his pants, confirmed that he would train and told the servant that he could stay here and not disturb him. The servant was perplexed and asked why his master had suddenly decided to start training. The young man replied that that was what he was talking about. His father's angry cries flashed through his mind, calling him a weak and inept lowlife, a disgrace to their entire great clan. His father could not believe that such a weakling was his son, and scornfully ordered him to get out of his sight, not to dishonor his name. In the Holy Sword clan, the law of the jungle was survival of the fittest. It was like a beast kingdom where the weak had no place. Brute force logic ruled in this family, and no one was free from it, even if the blood of the clan patriarch flowed in his veins. The real Yu Baek-jun was very kind and soft in personality. He wasn't gifted in martial arts, which was the main thing in the clan. Ever since he was a child, everyone looked down on him, considering him a useless bookworm unworthy of bearing the clan's surname. Their reactions reflected his current situation. Even the novice students didn't take him seriously, laughing at his weakness. They scoffed at his thinness, saying that if they were elders, they too would disown a worthless heir like him. He could have lived an ordinary life, enjoying books away from intrigue. But it couldn't be helped. That was the harshness of the Holy Sword clan. But it would be different now. He stretched determinedly, preparing for the grueling workout prescribed by the system assignment. He knew the movement technique learned from the Book of the God of War. His new physique should have helped him learn it faster. Though he wasn't sure he could move the way he wished he could, given his previous physical condition and zero talent for combat. Shingon technique is a martial art that makes the body lighter and improves speed, reflexes, and strength. He began to concentrate on it. Yes, this is it. He felt a surge of strength, a lightness in his body like when he had returned to the clan from the war god's tomb, transformed. It was quite convenient that he could use this movement skill whenever he wanted. He rushed forward at an incredible speed. It was much more real than he thought. The sensations were more vivid than in the game. The speed was breathtaking. The wind whistled in his ears. Shit, I'm going to die. He gasped at the frantic pace, hardly believing that it was his body that could do this. Was it really a human body? A system message appeared. He had completed the first steps of getting rid of the bony body and received 50 points and a strength boost. Finally, the young man collapsed to his knees, completely exhausted after 6 hours of exhausting jogging. He was breathing heavily. It wasn't easy at all. He struggled to catch his breath, feeling every muscle in his exhausted, unaccustomed body aching. Still, he looked at his readings in the system window, gritting his teeth. He had to be patient because the results were worth it. The results of the 6 hours of training exceeded his expectations. The characteristics had increased, and the Qigong skill had reached rank D. What a relief. Well, he rose to his feet but immediately cringed when he caught a foul odor. What was it that stank so badly nearby? He turned around and saw a man approaching with a cocky grin. He asked Riley where that rotting corpse smell was coming from. The man who turned out to be his third brother, Yu Kang-ho, added with a sneer, "Was it really just his little brother's sweat? How disgusting." Yu Baek-jun tensed up as he looked at the uninvited guest. What was this jerk doing here? His appearance didn't bode well for sure. Yu Kang-ho came closer, looking at him contemptuously from head to toe, and asked what he was doing here, polluting the clean air of the clan with his sweat. The young man forced out a fake smile, thinking that his brother had shown up just in time. He replied that he hadn't seen him in a while and he'd been practicing. The brother agreed that it had been a while. He added that they wouldn't have met if Yu Baek-jun had been cooped up in his room as usual. Kang-ho then asked with a sneer, why did he even need to practice? Baek-jun thought what a nerdy boomer his brother was. He laughed awkwardly. Kang-ho scornfully stated that an idiot practicing doesn't stop being an idiot. Baek-jun mentally cursed. It was Yu Kang-ho, the third son of the Holy Sword clan. He was also known as the main bastard and a thorn in the whole damn clan. He spent money recklessly left and right, was promiscuous with women, and constantly provoked disturbances outside the home. Yu Baek-jun lied, explaining that he was recently attacked by a monster, which is why he took up training to protect himself in the future. Kang-ho feigned surprise and asked if he was serious. Otherwise, he said, the worst could have happened. He obviously didn't believe his brother. Big Brother said he thought it was a waste of time, but if Baek-jun needed help, he could just let him know. With a predatory smirk, Kang-ho promised that he would kindly help him, clearly hinting at something unkind. His eyes glittered maliciously. Yu Kang-ho added with a sneer that he would help as he had helped him in the past, then turned around and left with his entourage. Yu Baekjun was left kneeling, humiliated and overwhelmed with anger, clenching his fists with impotent rage and resentment towards his brother. He raised his head, his gaze full of hatred. He mentally swore that his brother Yu Kang-ho would be dead to him from now on. He sighed heavily, his head down. He wanted to do the same to his brother, to tell him what he thought of him. But he held back, covering his face with his hand. It wasn't time for an open confrontation yet. He was too weak for that now. Right now, his main goal was to get stronger. He looked at the system window floating in front of him, reminding him of his goal. The system notified the start of the second phase of the first steps to getting rid of a bony body task, which required 3 hours of strength training. Now it was time for strength training. He looked resolutely at the system window, mentally preparing for the next stage of the test. Back in his room, he sat down cross-legged and opened the War God book, studying the skills and techniques available to learn. He noticed the strike skill, which allowed you to put mana into your fist or weapon, but cost as much as 100 skill points. He then looked at the triple mind technique, a pathetic rank D skill that could, however, teach the basics of mana utilization. There was also the triple fist technique, also rank D, a bandit martial art that taught the basics of striking and cost 50 points. He tallied up his points. 500 he got from the War God's tomb, and another 100 he earned from today's running task. That made 600. Great. By tomorrow, he would have enough points to learn the very skill he had looked out for earlier. He recalled one of the skills of Yoon Sung Ha, an A-rank hunter, attribute demonstration, a powerful A-rank technique. The description said that it was Swordmaster Yoon Sung Ha's technique for excess mana. It was worth 500 points, but it was difficult to use. However, he knew that this technique was a perfect match for the 1,000-year snow ginseng that he had found in the War God's tomb. He looked at the description of the triple fist technique and triple mind technique again, comparing them to the potential of attribute demonstration. They were useless compared to attribute demonstration, though strike didn't look that bad to begin with as a basic attack. Even if he practiced the triple fist to the point of exhaustion, it would still remain a third-rate martial art. But the reason was simple. The young man thought with a sly smile about the upcoming event, which required careful preparation and maximum strength from him. So, while Yu Baekjun worked hard to rid himself of his bony body, performing grueling workouts day after day, he continuously demonstrated his profound knowledge of medicines to the old pharmacist Chu Jun-won, impressing him again and again. He readily identified the evasive weed, explaining that it contains a paralyzing poison and can cause asphyxiation if consumed. However, as he immediately added, if this herb was washed properly and then dried thoroughly, it would turn into a source of energy. Old physician Chu Jun-won's eyes glistened enthusiastically. He was truly amazed by his young disciple's talent and knowledge. After successfully passing a medical test from Chu Jun-won, purchasing the attribute demonstration skill, and grueling training, the young man repeated the task of getting rid of the bony body for 4 long days, overcoming the pain and fatigue of his body. Only then did the long-awaited system message appear. He had obtained the skill, Development of Oriental Preparations rank, B. It was a success. Chu Jin-won proudly said that Yu Baekjun was now a great pharmacist, more talented than most of the healers in the clan. The young man looked at the skill window that only he could see. The healer hadn't mentioned it, so it was just like that game. However, that was not what was important now. He humbly replied to the old man that it was all thanks to his lessons and wise counseling. He then said that he wanted to prepare a certain drug and asked if Master Chu Jun-won could help him in this difficult endeavor. The old healer grinned, wondering if the young genius could possibly need his humble help to create a cure. He inquired as to what exactly his talented apprentice wanted to create that was so complex. The healer was intrigued by this request, but when Yu Baekjun took out the main ingredient from the pouch, the old man's eyes widened in shock. Oh my God! He could only exhale. It was the legendary 1,000-year snow ginseng. The healer couldn't believe his eyes when he saw such a rare treasure in front of him. Following that, the young man laid out other precious ingredients as well. Sunroot, fire spirit root, and even fire ginseng. Unbelievable! The healer suddenly exclaimed, realizing the reason why the young lord had been attacked by the monsters on Mount Sorak. It was all about the herbs. The young man smiled guiltily and apologized for not telling the truth from the beginning. The healer shook his head, saying he understood. In any case, the healer recognized that although he had never seen the ginseng itself in his life, the energy emanating from it definitely belonged to a 1,000-year-old treasure. He asked curiously what kind of medicine the young man was going to make. He replied with a smile that he wanted to make a yang pill. He explained that the pill was to bring the yang energy to its peak, so much so that it suppressed the cold yin energy of the ginseng. The healer was stunned. Was the young man really going to eat this incredibly powerful 1,000-year snow ginseng whole? This is insane. He confidently confirmed that he would eat the ginseng. The healer realized that this was what the young man had been training so hard for the past few days. The old man smiled broadly, admiring his disciple's courage and talent. He said then they should start immediately. System messages appeared. The Oriental drug development skill had been used, and Master Chu Junwan's help had enhanced its effect. The combined efforts resulted in the creation of the strongest yang pill, A, an incredibly powerful medicine containing concentrated yang energy. The young man sat down cross-legged and placed the bright orange pill and white ginseng root in front of him, preparing for the dangerous process of absorption. At first, he didn't know how to properly use the herbs he had received as a reward from the war god's tomb. But now he had a plan. It was necessary to use them just like this. The yang pill would strengthen his body, and then he could safely absorb the powerful ginseng energy. The healer said he would watch, and if the situation seemed dangerous, he would call for help. The young man thanked him. He resolutely brought the pill to his mouth and swallowed it. It felt strange, as if he'd eaten a piece of hot metal. In the next instant, his body was gripped by an unbearable heat. He flew into the air, his skin reddening and his hair standing up with energy. He was unbearably hot, but he gritted his teeth, enduring it with all his might. He had to hold on until the energy was fully absorbed. It wasn't time yet. The yang energy still hadn't spread throughout his body, concentrating in his energy center, the dantian. We had to wait. Once the yang energy began to circulate through every cell of his body, strengthening him from within, then, now, he grabbed the 1,000-year snow ginseng and quickly stuffed it into his mouth while his body was at the peak of yang energy from the pill. Damn it! The icy yin energy immediately began to freeze every meridian in his body. I should have channeled the energy more calmly. The healer cried out in horror as he saw the young lord's body covered in frost and steam coming out of his mouth. The situation was out of control. The young man hovered in the air, his body enveloped in a bright blue glow, his hair standing up. The healer stared in horror at this incredible sight. The old man exclaimed in panic that this was no good and wanted to call for help, seeing his young master squirming with energy. But the young man suddenly placed his hands on his stomach, in the dantian area, trying to control the icy yin energy raging within him. The physician recognized this pose. A cultivation technique? The old man couldn't believe his eyes as he saw the young man trying to control the energy. However, he immediately noticed that this technique was completely different from what the adepts of the Holy Sword Clan usually used. It was the triple mind technique, a sad and pathetic technique as the description stated, but it could help one learn how to use mana. The young man floated in the air, surrounded by a calm blue glow. He slowly rotated the energy inside him, directing its flows along the meridians. Impossible! The healer watched in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing with his own eyes at that moment. The energy circulated smoothly, without any interruptions. The young man had complete control over the flows, despite their incredible power and coldness. The old man couldn't believe his eyes. It was already a miracle that the young man was able to take the 1,000-year snow ginseng, but he was also performing a cultivation technique. The process was over. The young man sank gently to the floor, his body glowing with health and strength. He walked calmly out of the healer's room and into the courtyard. The shocked Chu Junwan caught up with him and asked him, how did the young master manage to learn and apply his cultivation techniques so quickly? The young man only smiled embarrassedly and replied that he had simply repeated someone else's performance without going into details about his method of teaching. He thought that he had managed to hide the truth about using the War God book, but also noted that the healer was clearly overestimating him. The young man found a suitably secluded spot in the courtyard where no one would disturb him, and stopped, looking around with a satisfied look. He mentally summoned his status window to check the results of absorbing the ginseng and applying the new mana cultivation technique. His stats have increased significantly. Strength, dexterity, and stamina to rank C, and mana to B. There are new skills and buffs from elixirs. Great! His mana rank had increased to B, and he even received powerful buffs from elixirs that increased his growth rate and energy recovery speed. Now, he clenched his fist resolutely, feeling a surge of new strength. It was time to try out one of the most powerful skills he had acquired. He activated the attribute demonstration. A bright blue aura enveloped his fist, a technique of fusing power and mana to create a powerful attack. He recalled information about Yoon Sung-ha, one of the characters in the game Path of Heroes, and her unique ability, Dragon Heart. This ability gave her a special heart that allowed her to produce insane amounts of mana, making her incredibly powerful. After he finished thinking, he slammed his fist on the ground in front of him, releasing a powerful stream of bright blue energy filled with power. The ground beneath his fist cracked from the incredible power of the blow. A shockwave of pure energy spread out in all directions, crushing the stone. As expected, the result was impressive. He looked at the destruction caused by the new technique with satisfaction. Since it was a rank A skill, it was very powerful, capable of dealing serious damage even without using a weapon. However, he immediately felt a sharp weakness, his face contorted with tension. The price for such strength was extremely high. He collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. The attribute demonstration skill required an inconceivable amount of mana, almost completely draining him. However, one could not expect otherwise, as this technique was created by Yoon Sung-ha specifically to control her own excess mana. The young man realized that he had only managed to avoid the dire consequences due to the power of the 1,000-year snow ginseng that he had absorbed earlier. He looked up at the night sky, thinking about Yoon Sung-ha herself. This mysterious and powerful woman gave him mixed feelings. He assumed that at this time in the game's storyline, she was supposed to be somewhere in the US, far away from Korea and the Holy Sword clan. The young man smiled at his thoughts. It would be interesting to meet her later when he was strong enough to resist her. But now it was time to prepare for the most important event that would determine his future fate in this cruel world. The next morning, his faithful servant Choi Seung-min brought him breakfast. Surprised to note that the young master had started getting up so early, the young man asked the servant if the clan was doing anything special this morning. Seung-min hesitated for a moment before answering the question. He explained that it was Sunday, so the clan members would be watching the training, as was the long-standing tradition. The servant added that he was asked if the gentleman wanted to join the observers, but he declined for him. The young man, on the other hand, stated that he would go. Seung-min was in complete shock, dropping the tray of food. He couldn't believe his ears, interjecting, "Was the master really serious?" The young man calmly replied that taking part in the clan's affairs was his duty as one of the family members, wasn't it? The servant recalled that the Lord had watched the training only once as a child, and afterward said he never wished to see such a thing again. The young man interrupted him, asking if there was enough time, for there was only an hour left. He went to get ready and told them to let the others know he was coming. The young man walked confidently through the clan courtyard, accompanied by his faithful servant Choi Seung-min, ready for the upcoming important event. The two disciples at the gate looked at each other in surprise when they saw him. Wasn't that Yu Baek-jun? What was he doing here? Had he come to observe? One of them grinned incredulously, suggesting that there was no such thing. The young man ignored their whispers, walking past them. Observing morning training was an ancient tradition of the Holy Sword clan. New apprentices practiced in groups every morning. The martial instructors and members of the main family of the Holy Sword clan were watching the training. The young man thought what a useless tradition this was, and among the observers seated in the seats of honor, he saw him. The head of the clan, his own father, Yu Mu-hak. He moved closer to the platform where his father sat on the throne. Tension hung in the air as father and son looked at each other in silence. Yu Mu-hak, the current head of the Holy Sword clan, sat on his throne, his face impenetrable and his gaze cold and evaluating. Behind him, as protocol dictated, stood the clan's chief combat instructors, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. Someone called his name, Baek-jun. The young man turned around and saw his older sister sitting in one of the seats of honor. She asked with a smile if she'd heard he'd been attacked by monsters and wondered if he was okay after the incident. It was Yu Jung-young, the eldest daughter of the Holy Sword clan, one of his half-sisters in the clan's power struggle. He smiled politely at his sister, thanking her for her concern. He said that he was able to recover thanks to Dr. Chu Jun-won's help. His father snorted contemptuously, calling him a loser. Yu Kang-ho, who was sitting next to him, picked up on it, rebuking him for dishonoring their family. He gritted his teeth, holding back his anger. He had to think of good things, not to give in to the provocations of his unfriendly parents. Next to Kang-ho sat Yumin, his fourth sister. She looked aloof and indifferent to everything going on around her. It was Yu Ming, the fourth daughter of the Holy Sword clan, the only one of his siblings who showed no interest in the power struggle. Sister Yu Jung-yeon asked with a slight chuckle, Was it true that he had started to frequent the treatment room since he had no talent for swordsmanship? She added that medicine was the best thing for someone like him who did nothing but read books. The young man felt a prick of resentment. He sighed, thinking he'd tried to start off softer, but guessing it was time to get to the main event he'd come here for. Yu Kang-ho contemptuously called him a pathetic brat and told him to come back after training to kill him, that is, to teach him the art of the sword. But Yu Baek-jun coldly looked at his brother and asked if he could shut his mouth. For that matter, the impertinence was unheard of. Yu Kang-ho was stunned by this audacity, unable to believe his ears. He couldn't utter a word, shocked by his younger brother's sudden boldness. The young man noted with disgust that he could smell his brother's stinky breath even from here, wondering if he noticed the odor after cigarettes and coffee. Kang-ho flashed with anger and embarrassment, disbelievingly interjecting what the man had just said, that he was allowing himself to say such a thing to him? Baek-jun grinned and advised his brother to brush his teeth more carefully if he had time to chase girls, and to watch his tongue at the same time. Then he calmly turned and walked away, leaving his brother and sister utterly bewildered by his defiant behavior and harsh words. Yu Kang-ho shouted after him in rage, calling him a bastard and asking him if he was fed up with his life since he dared to talk to him like that. The young man ignored his brother's cries and knelt down in front of his father, the head of the clan, informing him that he had one request for him. He firmly stated his desire to study martial arts, thinking to himself that it was finally time for his first major assignment. He mentally prepared himself to begin training, focusing on the first form of the heaven-scaling sword technique he intended to master. His father, Yu Mu-hak, coldly asked what he was doing here, for this was no place for someone who had no interest or talent for fighting. The young man replied that he had recently shown interest in them. The father doubtfully asked if he had really shown interest. The clan leader reminded him that he had always claimed as if he didn't want to learn techniques designed to kill other people. Yu Baek-jun admitted that he had said that before, but when he was on the verge of death, he completely changed his previous decision and views. He explained that instead of dying without being able to do anything about it, he wanted to learn martial arts for the sake of survival. His father looked at him intently and asked dryly, what now? What were his future intentions after such a sudden decision? The young man asked permission to learn martial arts from one of the 4 great instructors of the clan, hoping his father would agree. Yu Kang-ho once again couldn't help himself and intervened, shouting at him not to make him laugh. Did he really think that someone like him had the right to do so? His father sternly cut him off that his talent for martial arts was negligible, and it would be a waste of time to train someone with such a useless gift. His father added that it would be all the more a waste of time if his teacher was one of the clan's prized combat instructors. The young man objected with a smile, asking what if he did have a talent for martial arts that no one just didn't know about. He thought to himself that he knew exactly what his father would say to him. The clan leader's reaction was predictable, as it always was in such cases. Yu Baek-jun confidently stated that he would prove them all otherwise. He is talented enough to be trained by a combat instructor. His sister Yu Ming asked with interest how exactly he planned to prove himself and prove he had a talent for fighting. The young man turned to his father, the first major event. He knew this was his chance. He had to make the most of it. This? He paused, gathering his wits before voicing his bold proposal that would change everything in this clan. He announced that in exactly 1 week, he would defeat his older brother Yu Kang-ho in a fair sparring match in front of the entire clan. Yu Ming laughed upon hearing his words. Yu Kang-ho, on the other hand, was furious, not believing that this brat dared to challenge him so openly. Kang-ho exclaimed indignantly, was he really laughing at him? He never thought he would hear such a thing from this weakling. Yu Baek-jun turned to his father and asked what he would say to his proposal. He waited for the clan head's decision, breathless with excitement. Yu Mu-hak looked at him with a heavy look and said that he would like to see this attempt, but warned that it was his last chance. If he failed in this sparring, he would no longer belong to the Holy Sword Clan. That was the price of his audacity. His father added that he should be willing to put at least that price on the line, since he dared to challenge his brother. The young man bowed with a smile and replied, "Yes, father." He accepted the terms, willing to risk everything for a chance to change his destiny. He had exactly 1 week to prepare for the decisive fight that would determine his future in the Holy Sword Clan. If he can defeat Yu Kang-ho, he will begin to learn martial arts from one of the 4 great instructors of the clan. It could be said that the reward for this event would be learning a new skill for free. It was a chance that could not be missed. He approached the training dummy known as the Mana Scarecrow. It absorbed the user's mana and could move and attack. The young man smiled with anticipation as he looked at Mana's Scarecrow. He mentally addressed his brother. "Yu Kang Ho, you're done for." He was ready. The two clan disciples looked at the training ground with astonishment. One of them asked, "Is it really that weakling Yu Baek Jun practicing?" The second one recalled the rumor that Baek Jun ran away in tears when Mr. Yu Kang Ho tried to train him, adding that it will be interesting now. The first one doubtfully asked how long he thought Yu Baek Jun would be able to last. The second only replied that it was obvious. The young man meanwhile focused on practicing the triple fist technique, a low-ranked martial art known for its simplicity. He remembered the description of the technique: a martial art learned only by alley thugs, the three basics being jabs, elbow strikes, and uppercuts. He then combined it with the Qinggong technique for fast movement and the strike skill to enhance his strikes with mana infusion. He delivered a powerful blow to the training dummy using strike, a technique that allows you to attack with mana through your fist or weapon. The dummy shattered from the force of the blow. The young man continued to train, practicing combinations of strikes and movements with persistence. His training was watched from afar by an unfamiliar young woman with short hair, her face remaining completely impenetrable. 3 days had passed since he had started his hard training. Yu Baek Jun continued to torture his body, completing one system task after another. He was also being watched by a middle-aged man standing on the roof of one of the buildings. He was scrutinizing the young man's every move. The observer thought that there was nothing special about the young gentleman's training at first glance. Standard exercises, standard techniques. He saw the young man just running around using the Qigong technique and then hitting the training doll with the basic triple fist technique. But what did he do that... The observer couldn't understand how Baek Jun, who was known for his weakness, suddenly had such strength. He noted that the young man had enough energy to run with Qigong technique all day. His posture did not sag, and he was experienced. And he also didn't understand why he chose the fist technique rather than the sword, which was the traditional weapon of the Holy Sword clan. A man approached the woman who was watching and asked her something quietly. She replied briefly that nothing much had happened. He then asked if she had changed her mind about that issue. The woman thanked him for his interest, but said no. The man sighed, saying that it would be more comfortable if she supported young master Yue Dai Ran. She only wished him to take care of himself. The scene changed abruptly, showing a battlefield dotted with mannequins. The young man wiped away the sweat with satisfaction, thinking that he had mauled all the training dummies for this session. A pretty good effort. He sat down on the ground, pondering. He was worried about possible changes from the game, but there didn't seem to be any differences so far. If it wasn't for the 1,000-year snow ginseng, he would have fainted from the exertion long ago. Suddenly, a woman's voice called out to him. "That voice?" He looked up and saw a young woman coming toward him, the same one who had been watching him from a distance earlier. The woman, who identified herself as Han Sung-ah, anxiously asked if he was sure he was okay after such a grueling workout. The young man remembered the class system of the Holy Sword clan. Head, blood ties, senior master, teacher, and disciples. A strict hierarchy. Head teachers and regular teachers often supported those heirs they liked better, influencing the balance of power in the clan. It is quite natural that the more support the heir received, the more advantages he had in the competition for power. Some teachers, however, he knew preferred to maintain a strict neutrality in this eternal tussle for a place in the sun. And as a prime example of such neutrality was exactly her, Han Sung-ah, one of the strongest warriors of the clan, standing in front of him right now. He thought to himself. Finally, as he saw her holding out a towel to him, he asked her what she was talking about earlier. Han Sung-ah reminded him of Yu Kang Ho, noting that the one who had been trained for a long time by the head teacher himself, the most experienced mentor. The young man boldly interjected, "So what?" Han Sung-ah was surprised by this reaction, interjecting to ask what he meant by this question. He assumed she was asking what was the point of fighting if he was doomed to lose to such a strong opponent anyway. Han Sung-ah hastened to object that that wasn't what she meant to say. The young man assured her that he understood her doubts and would have asked the same thing if he were her. Be that as it may, he didn't request this sparring without a good reason. He had some ideas about it, a cunning plan of his own. Han Sung-ah tilted her head curiously, asking if his idea happened to be using fist techniques instead of sword techniques. Her eyes, they were full of genuine curiosity. He noted her keen interest in his unconventional approach to combat. But what was she so interested in? Han Sung-ah was unique. Most of the clan members showed no interest in anything that didn't involve a sword. But she was different from the others. She was interested in all aspects of the fight and wanted to use everything to get even stronger. For example, she was interested in magic. However, she was just being cautious because of her position as a teacher without showing it openly. Han Sung-ah noticed that the use of fist skills by the successor of the Holy Sword clan was something out of the ordinary and unusual. After all, this was the Holy Sword clan, a place where the art of sword-wielding and swordsmanship was always prized and studied exclusively. The young man asked defiantly, "Who decided that? Who made this rule that the members of their clan should be limited to the sword?" He reminded her that in the past, the god of war himself had used not only swords, but also fist techniques, spears, even bow and arrows in battle. He utilized every available means of fighting. So why did the current Holy Sword clan arm themselves and rely on only one sword? Han Sung-ah was a little embarrassed, muttering, "Nuh-nuh." The young man, however, asked her to listen, calling her teacher Han Sung-ah, preparing to explain himself. He was adamant that he had no intention of sticking to this stupid and outdated rule. He would study anything that would help him become stronger. The young man thought that, honestly, the reason was because the god of war had only left behind sword techniques. But no one knew why that was the case. The god of war himself never appeared in the game in person, remaining a mysterious figure. Only his book held some of his power and knowledge. Han Sun-ah replied that she understood him. She added that he could afford to think that way since he was not restricted by the clan's way of training. She smiled and offered her help with training if he needed it, though she admitted she was far from perfect herself. "This is it!" the young man mentally exclaimed after recognizing her curiosity. This was his chance to gain the support of one of the strongest teachers in the clan. He asked, "Doesn't she know that everyone in the clan despises him? If she were to teach him, she would be despised too." Han Sung-ah replied with a smile that she was already an outcast in this clan. It might have seemed rude, but that was the truth of her situation. She explained that since they were both looked down upon, her becoming his mentor wouldn't change anything, would it? The young man thought for a moment. The other teachers would have come up with any excuse to refuse if he asked them to train him, but she had agreed. Han Sung-ah gave a positive answer, not because she was also looked down upon, but because she simply didn't care about other people's opinions. In addition, she was talented as a teacher. The young man realized that this was his unique chance. He looked into her eyes and said with a smile that he wanted to become her apprentice. Han Seon-ah was a hunter with the potential of a magic swordsman like Yoon Seon-ha great then. The teacher looked anxiously at Yoo Baek-jun, asking him to stay here. Baek-jun himself didn't understand what was going on and asked him to wait. The tired lad offered to postpone everything to tomorrow, for it was already late. But he was sternly told not to talk like a weakling. It was undignified. Baek-jun tensed up, sweat breaking out. He was asked a reasonable question. How would he defeat Yu Kang-ho if he was so indecisive? Night came, illuminating the Holy Sword clan's estate with the moon. It was said that teacher Han Sung-ah becomes a different person when he teaches. The next day, Yoo Baek-jun stood in front of Han Sung-ah on the training ground, ready to heed her instructions. The teacher explained that the clan's main technique, the mind technique, a gift from the god of war, took a long time to master. But there was no better technique. She decided to show him the modified version. Sitting down behind him, she placed her hand on his back, preparing to infuse her mana. A blue glow enveloped her hand, and a stream of pure energy flowed into Baek-jun's body. She began to demonstrate mana control. Suddenly, Han Sun-ah froze in amazement. She could feel the size of his dantian. This explained his past failures in training. Such a huge reserve of energy was completely uncharacteristic of a beginner who had just started learning mind techniques. It was astonishing. Moreover, while manipulating mana, she sensed how unbalanced his body was, yet, as if it was a gift from heaven. Baek-jun's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Ah, so that's how it's done," he said. He instantly grasped the point. He confidently stated that he would now try it himself. Han Sung-ah, though stunned, nodded, ready to help her student. Baek-jun concentrated with a hand on his shoulder. The teacher thought that mastery required countless hours of practice. But this young man had shunned martial arts his entire life. How could he so easily control the mana he had barely touched? Han Sung-ah pondered. Innate data, dantian size, and physical potential were one thing. Knowing how to use the techniques was another. But what happened next, when Baek-jun channeled mana himself, threw her into a state of complete, utter shock. She remembered how her coworkers had laughed at her, eager to serve the heir to Yu Dai-ran, dreaming of power and position. It had always seemed to her that for most in the clan, political intrigue and the struggle for influence were far more important than the path of the warrior. However, What she had just seen in this young master, the despised and weak Yu Baekjun, was something unbelievable. Yu Baekjun turned to his mentor, waiting for an evaluation of his actions. He curiously asked how he had done with the exercise. Han Sung-ah stared at him with her eyes wide open, her mouth slightly ajar in amazement. She could hardly utter that it was perfect. She was amazed. He had reproduced her movements absolutely accurately, having seen them only once. It was truly an unfathomable talent. The teacher thought that perhaps the greatest talent among all his siblings was hidden in this weak young man. Unbelievable. She silently stared after the departing Baekjun, still digesting what she had seen. If this is really the same Yu Baekjun. Baekjun pondered the legacy of the god of war. The one wielded sword, spear, bow, and hand-to-hand combat. Why would the clan only use swords? He firmly decided to himself that he would not adhere to this strange restriction. He would study anything that would help him become stronger. Han Sung-ah looked thoughtfully into the distance. She was never going to support the heir, but this idea might not be such a bad idea. Baekjun lay on the bed with the book, feeling satisfied. This was so easy. He could never get enough of free skills. The system notification for activating the Han Seong-ah interest event popped up in his mind. The first condition was skill training, not sword training. The second condition was to talk about things that would interest her. His words about wanting to learn everything for the sake of power clearly hit the mark. And the third, as he realized from Han Song-ah's astonished reaction, was the possession of the greatest talent he had just demonstrated. Baekjun smiled contentedly. Once he met all the conditions, Han Sun-ah would teach him two powerful skills, including the mind technique. He studied the description of the heaven-spinning mind technique developed by the god of war. It allowed him to accumulate mana and activate his physique. Baekjun thought about it while looking at Han Sung-ah's retreating figure. Satisfying her interest was not an easy task. Why didn't she come earlier? Even if he fulfilled all the conditions in his past life, without the talent, she would just leave. That was the key point. But right now, in this body, he possessed an unearthly talent. He was sure that Han Song-ah wouldn't pass by such a genius, and smiled contentedly. The sun was shining over the rooftops of the manor. There was only one day left until the scheduled sparring session with Yu Kang-ho time was running out. The other clan disciples watched Baekjun's training in amazement. They whispered, wondering how he wasn't tired to the point of exhaustion. The instructor yelled at the running back Jun that he was completely misapplying the Qinggong technique and demanded that he move his feet faster. Han Sung-ah ran beside the exhausted Baekjun, encouraging him and demanding him to focus. Good job. Keep up the pace. The instructors observing from the sidelines noted that he was really trying hard. Another agreed, noting his diligence. Baekjun was barely breathing, but Han Sun-ah was relentless, yelling at him to run faster. One viewer wondered if she was always so strict. Finally, completely exhausted, Baekjun collapsed to the ground. Han Sun-ah stopped beside him, looking down at him. She decided that the training could be finished for today. The teacher reminded him that he had to be in perfect condition by tomorrow. Baekjun, with circles under his eyes from fatigue, thanked teacher Sun-ah for her help. He admitted that he had learned a lot from her. Han Sun-ah was surprised when she admitted that she didn't think he would go through the entire training session without a single complaint. He blamed it on her enthusiasm. He asked her to stay close by and continue to train him. He still had a lot of work to do on the techniques she had taught him. Baekjun looked exhausted as he talked about needing to work hard. Han Sun-ah mentally questioned his words. She thought that wasn't quite true. He was able to execute the mind technique perfectly on the first try, just as she had shown him. And yet the master, his father, claimed that Baekjun had no talent. Suddenly, there was a loud bang that interrupted her thoughts. The instructors watching the training session flinched at the sudden rumble, turning around in surprise at the sound. Han Sung-ah and Baekjun also looked towards the entrance of the training ground. Their uninvited guest was standing there. At the entrance stood Yu Kang-ho, the third son of the clan, wearing dark glasses. He said his younger brother's name with menace in his voice. His face contorted with rage, his eyes widening madly. He roared a single word toward Baekjun. Bastard! Han Sun-ah recognized him, calling him young Master Yu Kang-ho. Baekjun only gave a short, unhappy hum at the sight of his brother. Baekjun cast a glance at Han Sung-ah as if looking for support and turned to her. Teacher, she looked at him questioningly, but he immediately told her not to interfere. Han Seong-ah wondered if she had understood him correctly. Yu Kang-ho didn't wait and immediately attacked with a powerful fist strike, but Baek-jun reacted in time and blocked it. The enraged Yu Kang-ho stared fiercely at his younger brother. He growled, asking if he dared to mock him. Yu Baek-jun, despite the abrasion on his cheek, calmly replied to his brother that he had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Yu Kang-ho grabbed him by his clothes in a rage, shouting why didn't he tell his father that he was refusing the scheduled sparring. Baek-jun nonchalantly wondered why he would do that. Kang-ho growled that there was no way his brother could overpower him. The older brother clutched his collar even tighter, resenting what a shame it was for him to fight against such a lowlife. Baek-jun called him brother. Yu Kang-ho was slightly taken aback by this calmness. Baek-jun, on the other hand, asked why his brother was so nervous about the upcoming fight. He suggested with a slight chuckle, wondering if Yu Kang-ho was afraid of losing to him. This assumption clearly caught the bully off guard. Baek-jun recalled that their father approved the fight and asked if Kang-ho didn't realize that now neither of them could refuse. Yu Kang-ho broke out into a loud, slightly nervous laugh, and then snorted contemptuously, as if his brother's words were a complete absurdity. He let Baek-jun go, acknowledging his point and adding that he, Kang-ho, shouldn't have brought up the conversation in the first place. Baek-jun calmly said they'd see each other tomorrow and added that he was sure his brother already knew one important detail. Yu Kang-ho turned around with a sinister smirk, emphasizing that there was no rule against taking an opponent's life during sparring. Baek-jun looked at him and advised him to prepare better for tomorrow. Han Sung-ah watched the scene silently. Yu Kang-ho withdrew, accompanied by his backup singers, who were all admiring what a cool young gentleman he was. As he left, his entourage had already begun to place bets, arguing over how many seconds Baek-jun would last against their master. When they left, Baek-jun turned to Han Sung-ah and offered to go back. The teacher briefly agreed, still impressed. And so, time passed, bringing the moment of the decisive battle between the two brothers of the Holy Sword clan closer and closer. Against the backdrop of the majestic mountains, the clan's estate spread out. Finally, the long-awaited day of sparring had arrived. The arena was ready, with a light dust hanging over it. The spectators were already gathered in the designated stand. Baek-jun's two sisters, Yu Jung-yeon and Yu Min, were walking up to the arena. The older one asked who had requested this duel. Yu Min hesitantly replied that it seemed to be Yu Baek-jun. Yu Jung-yeon curiously asked if it was true. Yu Jung-yeon noticed that Yu Kang-ho had come in surprisingly early. She assumed that Yu Baek-jun must not have been there yet. She thought with a slight chuckle at the old men present, shifting her gaze to the podium where the top of the clan was gathered. There, at the empty throne of the clan head, there were already some important figures standing by the empty throne, including the healer Chu Jun-won and the future opponent Baek-jun. Yu Jung-yeon cringed, thinking that all these influential people were clearly supporting her older brother, Yu Dai-ran. She looked around at the people present, pondering which one of them was really worth paying close attention to today. Her gaze stopped on a stern-looking woman named Ja Young. Yu Jung-yeon decided that this figure would have to be brought to her side. At this moment, Yu Min's sister called out to her, asking her to look in a certain direction. Yu Jung-yeon hummed questioningly. Yu Baek-jun calmly approached the arena. Unexpectedly, he was accompanied by his instructor Han Sung-ah. Yu Jung-yeon raised an eyebrow in surprise. She didn't understand why the esteemed instructor Han Sung-ah was next to this weakling. Baek-jun looked around the arena with a slight smile, mentally thankful for the fence but complaining that it didn't protect him from the cold. He turned to his teacher, asking with a smile if Han Sung-ah agreed with him. She looked a little worried and remained silent. Noticing her condition, Baek-jun asked if something was wrong. Han Sun-ah replied that she didn't think as if he would lose today's fight. Baek-jun smiled wider, reminding her that she had seen his training, and added that his servant Seung-min was also very worried. However, Han Sun-ah expressed her concern, calling Yu Kang-ho too cruel. She was afraid that Baek-jun might get hurt even if she won. Baek-jun noticed that she sounded just like his official teacher. Han Sun-ah was clearly embarrassed and surprised by this remark. Before he could add anything, a loud cheer rang out, announcing the arrival of the head of the Holy Sword clan. Baek-jun looked toward the bleachers and told Han Sung-ah that they better get ready to start the fight. Then he suddenly turned to her, asking if she wanted to know something interesting. Han Sun-ah looked at him questioningly. Baek-jun nodded towards Yu Kang-ho, reminding him that he's liked to go to different places since he was a kid. The teacher confirmed that she had heard about it. He lowered his voice and said that Kang-ho had once met a monster that had horribly injured his right arm, and it had barely been healed. Han Sun-ah returned Baek-jun his outerwear. He thanked her, accepting the items and clarifying how he should proceed. He thought that he had mentioned Kang Ho's arm injury for a reason. At that moment, a system notification flashed in front of his eyes. There was a new task. I've become a disgrace to my family. You had to teach Yu Kang Ho a lesson by defeating him in sparring. Baek Jun looked at his father, Yu Mu Hak, who was sitting on the throne. He mentally asked him not to worry too much. The bout referee loudly announced that the time for sparring was up and loudly asked if both competitors were ready. Baek Jun smiled quietly, noting to himself that Yu Kang Ho looked in good shape. The judge took the silence as agreement. Yu Kang Ho looked at his brother fiercely, his mind full of lust for killing. He mentally growled that Baek Jun was finished. He swore to himself to kill this upstart at any cost. The referee raised his hand, preparing to announce the start of the fight. The referee shouted out, "It's starting!" Yu Kang Ho immediately jumped up from his seat, rushing to attack his hated younger brother. He used the heaven-soaring sword technique. Baek Jun thought that the 5 dragon fangs should be enough for now. Yu Kang Ho gloated, going to see how his brother would dodge since the latter hadn't even studied martial arts properly. Baek Jun prepared for the attack. His body was enveloped by a faint energy. He was collected and focused on his opponent. A flashback from the past. A player violently kicked the table? Damn it, nothing was working in this damn game. He sighed heavily, sitting in front of the monitor. This doesn't fit. That doesn't fit. He remembered how he'd struggled to pass for Baek Jun. So what does it take to defeat Yu Kang Ho? He was then stuck at this very point, not knowing how to defeat the strong brother. He couldn't ask anyone for advice because no one wanted to play as the weakest character, but he felt there must be a way. He leaned back in his chair, pondering, maybe attack this way or the other way. He tried different options, but it was all in vain. And suddenly it hit him. The player's eyes widened at the idea that had suddenly come to his mind. What if we tried it like this? He smiled slyly. The plan was a bit sneaky and dishonest, but he felt it could work against the strong Kang Ho. Game mechanics appeared before his mental gaze. The fun factor of the game was the ability to combine different skills. Choi Seung-min's loyal servant advised his young master to rest properly today. Yu Baek Jun agreed with a smile. Seung-min wished him a good night and said he would also go to bed. Baek Jun said goodbye warmly to his faithful servant. Left alone, Baek Jun hesitated. The golden light of the interface flashed in front of him. How to combine skills to defeat Kang Ho? He looked at the glowing panel in front of him with interest, preparing to explore the options available to him for the upcoming battle. The interface showed a list of available skills. Earth Strike, Unified Strike, Wind, Triple. His finger touched the first item. He imagined the use of Earth Strike, a powerful kick to the ground, raising a cloud of dust and rocks right in the enemy's face. In the actual battle, Yu Kang Ho laughed contemptuously as he received a portion of dust in his face. He was thinking what a crappy technique. But then his expression changed to one of bewilderment. Something had happened. A notification popped up. Plus, a tribute demonstration. Yu Kang Ho was caught off guard, feeling some sort of impact. He shouted out in a rage what the hell was going on here. He bellowed an invective at Baek Jun, accusing him of using dirty tricks to trip him up during the fight. Suddenly, a powerful fist slammed right into his face with a deafening sound of impact. It was a sudden and powerful strike. Yu Kang Ho flew backwards and collapsed on the ground. Yu Baek Jun stood over him, now armed with a training wooden sword. Enraged and humiliated, Yu Kang Ho struggled to his feet and rushed forward with a battle cry, ready to tear his assailant apart. But Baek Jun used the Qinggong swift step technique, instantly shifting to the side and easily dodging the attack. He looked at his brother stretched out on the ground, noting with slight regret what a shame it was for him, for Yu Kang Ho after all. Baek Jun reminded him of his own words about killing, adding that at this rate, Kang Ho wouldn't be able to leave a scratch on him. Yu Kang Ho, seething with anger and powerlessness, growled at his younger brother to shut up and stop his bullying. Baek Jun calmly stood across the room, addressing his brother. He asked if Kang Ho knew why his father was letting him do all his antics. He answered himself. Because Yu Kang Ho was talented, Baek Jun's eyes sparkled with confidence and knowledge. Yu Kang Ho froze in amazement. Baek Jun added, talented enough to humiliate others, but to be honest, he doesn't understand his father. Does he really think Kang Ho is a talent? Yu Kang Ho shouted at Baek Jun to shut up in rage and attacked with the moon slash technique, sending out a wave of energy. He grinned gloatingly, calling Baek Jun an idiot for trying to block the skill with his bare hands. This arrogance will ruin him. Yu Kang Ho was sure that his younger brother's hands would simply be destroyed by his powerful energy-enhanced sword attack. But Yu Baekjun activated the attribute demonstration, meeting the enemy's attack not empty-handed but with concentrated strength. His fist flashed with a bright light as it collided with the slit moon. The energy collided, causing a powerful release of force. Yu Kang-ho recoiled in utter shock. He felt the amplified energy in his brother's attack. How was this even possible? He struggled to his feet, unable to believe his eyes or understand how his despised younger brother could pull something like this off. Yu Baekjun calmly reminded him of the harsh truth of their world. Only the strong survive in the Holy Sword clan. The weak have no place here. He jumped high into the air, proclaiming the law of the jungle. The strong prey on the weak, and the weak, becoming stronger, devour the strong. Baekjun prepared for the final strike by combining skill demonstration and the powerful strike technique, putting all his strength into it. He brought his reinforced fist down on the ground next to his defeated brother, causing a deafening explosion and raising clouds of dust. Choi Sung-min, who was watching the fight, covered his eyes with his hand, complaining that he couldn't see anything at all because of the dust. When the dust settled a bit, only Yu Baekjun was visible in the ruined arena. A servant anxiously called out to his young master. A system notification popped up in front of Baekjun's eyes. The "I have become my family's disgrace" task had been successfully completed. As a reward, he received 300 points, and his knowledge of the War God book was greatly enhanced. He stood over the defeated Yu Kang-ho while the system reward window shone beside him, confirming his crushing victory. Baekjun looked at his brother with a satisfied smile, saying that since he was stronger now, he would take his power, mansion, and finances. He looked toward the podium where the elders sat, emphasizing that this was the kind of reward that went to the true victor. At the podium, Jaeyeon incredulously asked her neighbor if Baekjun had mastered the enhanced energy and attributes in a week. Toth confirmed, adding the most incredible thing of all: he did it completely on his own, without any outside coaching. The man with the red beard objected that he had heard of Han Seong-ae's help, but he was informed that she had only taught him about circulation and qigong. The elder standing next to him shook his head. It seemed no one had taught him the techniques of fist and enhanced energy. He couldn't believe it. Yu Jongyeon said the word genius thoughtfully, but she immediately rejected the thought. Even a genius can't do such a thing because he was talentless before. She remembered how her father had been trying to train Baekjun since he was a child. Was it possible that he had been wrong about him all this time? Yu Mu-hak, the clan head, rose from his seat, his face impenetrable. Did he really not see his son's potential? He gave an order to Han Sung-ah, who was standing next to him, to tell Yu Baekjun to come to his room immediately to talk. Meanwhile, Baekjun exhaled a sigh of relief as he admitted to his teacher that things could have ended badly since he had used up all of his mana. Han Sun-ah said she thought he might get hurt, but he won and stayed in one piece. It was amazing. He just reminded her that he asked her not to worry. The teacher looked impressed. Baekjun thought that if he officially asked for her support, she might even agree to be his mentor. She handed him back his outerwear. He thanked her, thinking that she would soon be his instructor, so there was no need to hurry. At this moment, a messenger from the clan head approached them, informing them that Yu Mu-hak wished to see young Master Yu Baekjun. Baekjun politely replied that he would come as soon as he changed his clothes. He assumed his father wanted to ask him which instructor he wanted to study with. But his ambitions stretched much further than that. He didn't just want an official instructor, he wanted more. The defeated Yu Kang-ho was carried past on a stretcher. Baekjun thought that he would be treated by Ju Jun-won now, and it's telling. He grinned gloatingly. Kang-ho's reputation in the clan would plummet after such a defeat from his rookie brother, and he could take more from him. Baekjun decided to himself that he would do the same thing he did then, in that game, using his knowledge and cunning. Soon he was in Yu Mu-hak's room, where the elders and some of his siblings had already gathered, waiting to talk. His father turned to him, noting that Baekjun had expressed a desire to study martial arts. The son respectfully confirmed his intentions. Yu Mu-hak continued by saying that the senior teachers are the pillars of the clan, and only those endowed with true talent get the right to be trained by them. He looked at his youngest son with a probing gaze and asked a direct question on which much depended. Did Baekjun have talent? Yu Baekjun looked at his father defiantly, calmly clarifying, didn't his victory prove that he had talent? Jaeyeon, who was present in the room, stuttered and turned to him in shock. My young master. Yu Mu-hak looked at his son thoughtfully, recognizing that the spirit of a true warrior of the Holy Sword clan had definitely awakened within him. However, his father explained that it was impossible for all the senior teachers to be involved in his education at the same time. The choice was inevitable. One of the elders added that if the chosen teacher refused, Baekjun would have to accept it, for the pillars of the clan do not obey kin. Baekjun realized he only had to choose one mentor. He mentally confirmed that he had intended to do so. The elder listed the teachers, noting that 3 were already supporting Yu Daeran and would either refuse or teach useless things. Baekjun weighed the options. There was only one way left to activate the event he wanted. He made a decision. He smiled confidently and announced his choice. He wished to study under head teacher Jae-yeon, the most experienced of the mentors. Those present were reminded of Jae-yeon, the most experienced of the 4 senior instructors. She had served the current clan head for a very long time. Instead of fighting for power, she preferred to develop the clan's swordsmanship by conducting research and nurturing young talents. Among her many students, there were even those who later became respected clan combat instructors themselves. One such shining example was Han Sung-ah, who trained under Jae-young specifically during her years of study. Evaluating Jae-yeon's influence based on her contributions to the clan, talent cultivation, and swordsmanship, it was clear she was the most influential instructor. Baekjun repeated his choice. Naming Jae-yeon, the elder confirmed no doubt her influence in the clan was the greatest. Yu Mu-hak turned to Jae-young after calling her name and asked what she would say about his youngest son's choice. Clan physician Chu Jun-won mentally groaned. This was the end for Baekjun, for he had made an impossible choice. The healer knew. Mastering the aura so quickly was commendable. But Jae-yeon didn't take heirs as apprentices. Even Yu Dae-ran had only taught the basics. Chu Jun-won thought that Baekjun, being a recluse, had no way of knowing this. What a pity. If only instructor Jae-young. But then Jae-young interrupted the tense silence by saying that, like Han Sun-ah, she wasn't so uncompromising in her neutrality. But she wanted to confirm something first. Jae-yeon asked the young master for an apology and permission to come closer. Yu Baekjun calmly agreed to her request. The instructor put her hand on his back, infusing her energy. Baekjun realized she was testing to see if he had any talent. He was confident in the result of his test since he now possessed the heavenly body. Jae-yeon raised her eyebrows in surprise. She couldn't believe her sensations, exhaling shockedly that it was simply impossible. Baekjun grinned smugly to himself. Jae-yeon struggled to utter a single word. Perfect. The elders standing beside her, including the healer Chu Jun-won, were stunned. One of the elders turned to her, perplexed, asking what senior instructor Jae-yeon meant by the word perfect. She calmly replied that she meant exactly what she said. His physique was just perfect for martial arts. The elders looked at each other, unable to believe their ears. Even the strict and experienced Jae-yeon was forced to recognize his incredible potential. The clan head Yu Mu-hak then turned to her, asking her what she was going to do now, given the circumstances that had opened up. Jae-young admitted that she had so far declined the heir's requests for mentoring, not wanting to get involved in the succession conflict. However, after thinking about it, she stated that she might have to go against her principles now. She would accept him as a disciple. Yu Mu-hak looked at the instructor thoughtfully and nodded, telling her to do as she saw fit in this situation. The clan head announced that since the instructor had been chosen, everyone except Jae-yeon could leave the room, but Baekjun was in no hurry to leave. He turned to his father and said that before doing so, he would like to make one last request for today. Yu Mu-hak looked at his son with interest, asking what kind of request he was talking about. Baekjun confirmed that he had a request. He asked his father to allow him free use of the Holy Sword Clan's treasury for his needs and training. Jae-yeon looked at him in surprise, clearly not expecting such audacity from a young man who had just gotten a mentor. Baekjun remembered how his siblings, Yu Dae-ran, Yu Jong-young, Yu Kang-ho, and even Yu Min, always spent the clan's money freely. He, on the other hand, had been considered an inferior child all his life, receiving only crumbs that were barely enough for the most basic survival. He understood. If his father allowed him to handle the finances, it would mean that he would be fully recognized as a member of the Yu family. Baekjun thought that he used to be content with life without a lot of money, but now things had changed. There were too many things he wanted to splurge on. Yu Mu-hak briefly hummed as he pondered over the unexpected request of the youngest son who had just proven his worth to the clan. He made a decision and ordered that all the money previously allocated to Yu Kang-ho be given to his younger brother, winner Yu Baekjun. The two maids standing nearby gasped in shock. One of them couldn't stand it any longer and exclaimed to the head of the clan. She babbled that it was too cruel to Yu Kang-ho, but her father told her that until he learned the lesson, he would not get any money. The clan head looked at the maid sternly, his eyes gleaming coldly, leaving no doubt about the firmness of his decision. The maid was frightfully silent, not knowing what else to say in defense of her master. Realizing the futility of further objections, Baekjun turned to her, asking if she really thought it was cruel. He assumed she was Kang Ho's servant and asked for permission to ask a question. But the father intervened, asking the maid, "Hadn't Yu Kang Ho been living idly all this time, completely neglecting his training?" She hardly recognized that Kang Ho undoubtedly had talent, which was why her father let him do whatever he wanted. Father reminded her not to forget who won today. Did Kang Ho succeed at anything more than Baekjun? "It's the Holy Sword clan. Yu Kang Ho has become a weakling," summed up Yu Mu Hak in his stern voice. "There is no room for weaklings in this clan." He told the maid to leave if she understood. She left silently, leaving the head of the clan alone in his chambers. Later, that same maid was sitting in her room, thoughtfully sipping tea. The other maid quietly asked her how he was. She realized that the question was about the younger lord, Yu Baekjun, who had defeated his brother in a duel today. The woman shook her head, replying that she could not answer that question accurately, as she herself was under a great impression. She thought that she had trained countless talented young men and women, the future warriors of the clan, over time. But none of them had talent comparable to what she had seen from Junior Master Yu Baekjun today. Perhaps the thought struck her with its audacity, but she could not drive it away as she pondered the young man's future. She thought that perhaps his talent was so great that he could even compare to the clan head himself. And Yu Mu Hak in his chambers said thoughtfully, "This is strange." Yu Mu Hak pondered while looking at the manor. He had watched his son for many years, but had not seen even a glimmer of talent until now. He remembered that Baekjun had recently passed out for a few days after being attacked by monsters. Jaeon asked if he was hinting at something. The clan head confirmed that this was a possibility. Something could have happened to his son while he was unconscious. Yu Mu Hak chuckled, finding the thought quite interesting. He thought about the implications of this sudden change in his youngest son. He thought that Yu Baekjun could be another unexpected variable in the complex struggle to inherit power in the clan. Meanwhile, Baekjun had only 2 days to recover from sparring before beginning training under Jia Young. He studied the Book of the God of War, which contained techniques, automatically added new ones, and allowed him to spend points on skills and features. Baekjun was satisfied. Previously, he could only learn skills, but now, as the rank of the book increased, he could get new features as well. Features were akin to talents: immunity to poisons, accelerated mana regeneration, and a host of other useful passive bonuses. On top of that, he held the War God book in his hands, realizing its value beyond just learning the techniques he knew. He knew that certain game events could only begin after acquiring certain, sometimes rare, character traits. He had about a month and a half before his older brother, Yu Tai-ran, returned. Baekjun had no doubt that he would become his target. For this reason, it was necessary for him to become as strong as he could at all in the short time remaining. He decided it was time to change and adapt to the harsh realities of this new world, using all the knowledge and resources available to him. Before officially making his debut into the clan society, he decided to first find out some important information from his servant Sungmin. Sungmin clarified if the gentleman wants him to find out what items will be auctioned off in a week at the Somnium Bar. Baekjun remembered the mechanics of the game. The story and environment changed. Even the enemy's base could move. His actions could cause a butterfly effect. Therefore, it was much safer to ask Sungmin to run errands. He himself had no time because of his studies and financial management. He saw the mountains of gold and treasure chests that were Yu Kang Ho's inheritance. Such wealth was to be expected from a spendthrift brother. The clan's finance manager approached him, addressing him respectfully. "Young master." He brought what was now Baekjun's. The manager held out a card to which all of Yu Kang Ho's funds had been transferred, confirming the transfer of his wealth to the winner. Baekjun held a black card, a symbol of wealth available to only 1% of the people. The clan lived a secluded life, but the wealth hinted at the sale of gate trophies. He thought that although the card was a status mark, he himself had asked for it from his loyal servant Choi Sung-min. He handed the card back to Han Sun-ah, clarifying since she was personally giving it to him. The instructor confirmed that this was the case. Han Sun-ah announced with a smile that she was becoming his official teacher from this day forward, ready to dedicate her time to him. Baekjun realized the importance of this moment. The status of official teacher stood apart, even above blood ties in the hierarchy of mentorship. This meant that she would train him alone, although her duties were now more like that of a personal secretary. He grinned smugly. Han Sung-ah was one of the most talented teachers in the clan, just the person he needed, and such a valuable professional volunteered to be his mentor. He told her that he was honored to be her student. He opened the War God book, deciding to focus on training and learning one or two new features for reinforcement. He had found what he was looking for: the rank C stimulator trait. It allowed the body to withstand long periods of stress and recover quickly. The specialty was worth 300 points, more expensive than skills. But without the ginseng buff, it was necessary for intense training. He remembered how he used to be able to train tirelessly thanks to ginseng, but he realized that he couldn't rely on miracle drugs forever. This trait was perfect for his plans. Now he had to think about skills, for without them, the power would be incomplete. He knew that there were two ways to gain skills in the path of heroes. The first, the most common, was through hard training. The second way was to find and read a rare book of skills. A simple reading instantly granted the corresponding skill. The problem was that such books were incredibly rare, especially books with high-ranked needed skills. That was why training remained the more popular method of gaining abilities, and finding books depended more on luck. But Baekjun smiled slyly. Possessing the War God book, he could learn skills directly using the accumulated points at any time. Plus, his new status as heir and recognition by his father gave him access to the best training resources of the Holy Sword clan. This opportunity to get the training and resources he wanted was incredibly helpful to him as a hitman with game knowledge. Yu Baekjun looked at the clan's training grounds, realizing that this was the most important moment for him right now. His musings were interrupted by a voice. Senior instructor Jaeyeon turned to him, noting that he was already here. She invited him to come inside her office. It was Jaeyeon, the Sacred Sword clan's senior teacher, his new mentor. The instructor offered him tea while sitting at a low table, but added that she didn't know if the drink would be to his liking. Baekjun took the proffered cup, replying that he had no aversion to tea of any kind, ready to talk. Jaeyeon nodded, taking her cup, and clarified if she remembered correctly that he wished to learn martial arts from her. She looked at him carefully, bringing the cup to her lips, and asked him what kind of martial arts he would like to learn. Baekjun calmly replied while looking at his tea that he was primarily interested in hand-to-hand combat techniques. Jaeyeon froze upon hearing his words. He confirmed that it was the fist techniques that he wanted to master first. The instructor questioned with surprise if he really wanted to learn hand-to-hand combat techniques and not something else. Baekjun took a sip and confirmed his choice, even though he knew that usually clan heirs preferred to learn sword techniques. After all, it was the sword that was the symbol of the Holy Sword clan's martial arts, and it was the sword that all disciples and bloodlines studied. Jaeyeon gave him a serious look, reminding him if he even realized that he was in the Holy Sword clan, where the sword was the basis of everything. Baekjun calmly replied that of course he understood it perfectly well, but his decision was deliberate. He clarified that he wasn't claiming as if he was going to completely give up learning sword techniques. That would be foolish. The guy explained that the fist techniques were only the beginning. His true goal was to learn all kinds of martial arts like the God of War did. He stated that he was going to learn and use absolutely anything that would only help him become stronger in this world. Continuing his thought, he added that in this respect his choice had not fallen upon her by chance, and he had reasons for it. He mentioned that he had heard about her research on the war god's martial arts and thought that her knowledge might be useful to him. Jaeyeon covered her eyes as she pondered his words. She found his ambition and unconventional approach very interesting. Jaeyeon noticed that it was as if he was confident in her knowledge. Yu Baekjun confirmed with a smile that that was why he had chosen her. The instructor nodded, agreeing with his words and preparing to get to the point of their conversation about their upcoming training. She confirmed that, just as he said, she was familiar with the fist technique, having learned of it during her travels in search of ancient scrolls. However, she said there was one major problem. She could only find a record of an excerpt of this technique. Baekjun frowned, clarifying if that meant. Jaeyeon, sitting at the table, calmly confirmed his unspoken assumption. She looked at him seriously, explaining that the fragment of the fist technique she had found was imperfect and incomplete. Being honest, she advised him to study the heaven-scaling sword technique if he truly wished to become stronger. She mentioned the 9 dragon fangs, but Baekjun firmly interrupted her, stating that he would not change his original decision. He persisted in asking to be taught specifically the fist technique, despite her warnings of incomplete knowledge. Jaeyeon looked at him, noting to herself his unwavering determination in accomplishing his goal. She sighed and agreed, since he so earnestly wished it. An exclamation of surprise was heard outside. Baekjun thought to himself that she was pretty damn good, and noted that there really was a lot of talent here in the clan. The instructor informed him that she would teach him 2 movements. Baekjun thought that 2 movements for the fist technique were almost nothing. Jae-yeon confirmed his thoughts, reminding him that the technique was imperfect as much of it had been lost over time. She went out to the training area with him and created several glowing dummies out of pure mana for demonstration. The students observing them were surprised to notice the mannequins. This was something that rarely happened. They also saw Yu Baek-jun beside her. Suddenly, a mission window popped up in front of Baek-jun. Of course, I'm a genius. He had to prove his talent by repeating Jae-young's skill. He grinned as he read the terms and conditions. To him, a genius with a heavenly body, it seemed simple. Jae-young stood with her back to him, preparing for the demonstration, and said that she was about to show him the first move from the technique. She concentrated, gathering energy, and began to explain the name of the movement he was to repeat. Jae-yeon demonstrated the first move, a powerful spinning kick that created a vortex of razor-sharp blades of energy. She then gathered emerald energy around her, preparing to display the full destructive power of this fist technique. Gathering her strength, Jae-yeon swiftly rushed forward, hitting one of the training dummies with a stream of green energy. The impact caused a blinding green flash and a massive explosion that scattered the wreckage of the training ground around. The instructor stood in the middle of the smoking ruins left after her attack. Yu Baek-jun silently watched this show of strength. Baek-jun recognized this technique with a slight smile. He said its name out loud. Heaven Breaker. Jaeyeon turned to him, confirming that just as the name suggested, this technique had incredible destructive power. Baek-jun stared at the imposing crater left in place of the dummy, recognizing to himself the extreme power of this movement. The instructor explained that for this reason, the technique consumes an incredible amount of mana and the average person should not try it. Baek-jun nodded, showing that he understood the limitations. Jae-young announced that she would now show him the second move. She paused, however, before demonstrating the second technique, turning to the training scarecrow standing nearby. She walked over to a simple-looking training scarecrow made of wood and cloth, preparing for the next part of the explanation. Jae-young explained to Baek-jun that he could provoke the mana dummies to attack if he shot a sphere of his energy at them. She touched one of the mannequins created earlier to illustrate exactly how this works in practice. As soon as her mana touched the mannequin, it glowed brightly with a blue light, preparing to execute the program it had been programmed with. The mannequin instantly shot out a powerful stream of pure blue energy that rushed straight towards Yu Baek-jun. Unexpectedly for Baek-jun, the energy shot hit him directly in his forward arm, causing a slight burning sensation. Jae-yeon explained that the attack wasn't strong enough to hurt, but still burned a bit on a direct hit. Baek-jun looked at his slightly reddened hand in surprise, not understanding why the dummy had shot him specifically. He thought that he didn't recall such a scenario in the game at all. Jae-young, on the other hand, explained that she brought it up to demonstrate the second movement. Instructor Jae-young asked Yu Baek-jun to watch her movements very carefully as she prepared to show the second technique. The mana dummies she had created glowed brightly with a blue light, activating and preparing to shoot out streams of energy. 2 powerful energy projectiles rushed straight towards Instructor Jae-yeon, crossing the training ground at a tremendous speed. But she didn't dodge. With a graceful movement of her arm, enveloped in green energy, she met one of the projectiles flying at her. The students who were watching the training exhaled in astonishment. One of them mumbled in surprise, wondering if the senior instructor knew such martial arts as well. The same student added that he would never have dared to even try to repeat such a difficult and dangerous movement. Jae-yeon explained that this graceful reflection of the attack is called reverse strike. It's not as powerful as Heaven Breaker, but it's much more complicated. Baek-jun thought that this was a very useful skill that could come in handy in many situations, but required excellent mana control. The instructor added that she hadn't gotten a chance to use it in battle, but it could be useful in battles against mages. Baek-jun nodded. Unexpectedly to his mentor, Yu Baek-jun stated that he would now try to perform the move himself right now. Jae-yeon looked at him in surprise, questioning if she had understood him correctly since he had only seen the movement once. The students standing nearby began to whisper, wondering what the instructor and the young gentleman were talking about and why he was even with her. One of them explained to the other that he had heard that Baek-jun had asked Jae-young to train him after defeating Yu Kang-ho. The other one didn't believe it. He said that he would not believe such nonsense until he had seen it for himself. A movement on the platform caught his eye. Everyone saw senior instructor Jae-yeon walk up to one of the mana dummies and touch it with her hand. Baek-jun asked her if it was the second, more difficult movement that she would start the demonstration with. Jae-young calmly confirmed. The instructor mentally wondered, what was on his mind? Was he seriously claiming that he could execute a move after seeing it only once? She cast a glance at the gathered disciples, those who had not attended his sparring session with young Master Yu Kang-ho. These disciples didn't even try to hide their disdain, looking down on Baekjun. If he failed now, there would be even more ridicule. But Yu Baekjun confidently stepped forward, looked at the dummy, and calmly said that he was fully prepared for the test. Baekjun reflected on the fact that to learn a new skill, one usually had to either practice or use a skill book. But he was a different case. His path was different from the standard training methods available to other warriors in this world. Next came training, with an expert or alone, but hard training was inevitable. It was the only path to mastery. The dummy shot out a stream of energy, but Baekjun didn't need to waste time practicing or looking for books because he possessed the legendary book of the God of War, granting him incredible advantages and knowledge unavailable to mere mortals. He met the dummy's attack not with a graceful reflection, but with a fierce stream of fire energy created with the book. Flames enveloped his arm, forming a powerful counterstrike that easily absorbed and redirected the dummy's attack. Jaeyeon exhaled shockedly. Impossible! He didn't just repeat the reverse strike, he absorbed the attack and redirected it. The dummy from which the attack was coming from burst into bright flames and collapsed to the ground, burning to the ground from the power of Baekjun's counterattack. The watching disciples froze in mute amazement, their mouths ajar with shock. They could not believe their eyes. Jae-young was stunned. Was that even possible? To repeat and even improve the most difficult technique on the first try? She remembered that she herself had been called a genius, but even she had taken a very long time to learn the technique. And he didn't just repeat her movement, he improved it. The system window confirmed that the task, "Of course I'm a genius" task has been completed. Jaeyeon walked up to him, calling him awesome. She had never thought that he would use absorbed mana for the Heaven Breaker. Baekjun modestly replied that she was overpraising him, trying not to give away his true level of knowledge and ability. He explained that he had too little mana compared to her, so he decided to take the missing energy from an external source. He looked at the two craters, one from her technique, the other from his, and added that his performance was not quite up to par. His Sky Destroyer, he said, was loud but not very effective, hinting at the difference in net power. Jaeyeon admitted that the thought of his incredible talent came to her when she first met him. She called him very talented. She added that she has trained many over the years, but no one compares to him, and it is unlikely she will meet someone equally gifted in the future. Instructor Jae-young honestly admitted that she wasn't sure if she could teach him much, given his incredible talent. Baekjun was surprised. She added that she didn't even have the courage to be his teacher after what she had seen. He realized it was a pattern. The system notification flashed in front of him again, just as he had expected. He remembered a hidden feature of the quest. "Sure, I'm a genius." The reward varied depending on completion, affecting the quest Successor of the God of War. With her words of doubt in mind, he checked the updated mission window to see what his reward was now. There was a new assignment, Successor of the God of War, confirming his status. The reward was the skill Ghost Steps. Baekjun mentally rejoiced. Ghost Steps. He was going to buy this useful skill anyway, and getting it for free was even better. He thought there was a critical catch to this assignment, but he still enthusiastically told Jae-young that he wanted to train her. He asked if she had heard of Ghost Steps, a skill that bought time to use Heaven Breaker. She nodded uncertainly. Jae-yeon, shrouded in a green aura, offered to give it a try and thought that sparring was the best way to understand his capabilities. The difficulty of the training was disastrous. A whole week of grueling training had passed. As expected, Yu Baekjun worked hard, honing his new skills. He collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily and groaning that he couldn't take it anymore, completely exhausted from his workout. Jaeyeon walked over to him, noting that he was doing well. Baekjun looked at her in surprise, not believing his ears. She said with a slight smile that he had made great progress in just 1 week of intensive training with her. Baekjun, still lying on the ground, exhaled that it wasn't at all. He wasn't even close to her incredible skill level. Jaeyeon grinned, asking if he was already thinking of catching up with the senior clan martial instructor. At this moment, 2 people approached them. Clan healer Chu Junwon and instructor Han Sung-ah. The healer noticed that it looked a bit arrogant. Ja-young recognized them, greeting pharmacist Chu Junwon and noting that they hadn't seen each other in a while. Jo Junwon politely returned the greeting and offered Baekjun some medicine for exhaustion. Jae-young also greeted Sung-ah. Han Sung-ah respectfully said hello to her former mentor and asked the healer what exactly brought them here. Baekjun took a sip of the medicine and then looked at Ju Junwon and Han Sung-ah, noticing that they didn't know yet, right? He announced that teacher Han Sung-ah was now his personal teacher. Jaeyeon stretched out a surprised ho-oh, saying that it was clear to her. She remembered that Suna had talked about staying neutral when she became an instructor. Baekjun asked in surprise if that was true. Han Sun-ah blushed embarrassedly as she admitted that her opinion had changed and asked not to be made fun of because of this decision. Jaeyeon laughed as she apologized for being too rude and explained that she just wanted to tease her former student a little. Han Sun-ah added, saying just in case that she didn't change her mind rashly, but she was still a little hesitant. She quietly confirmed that she was aware of the possible rashness of her move, but her decision was firm and considered. Jaeyeon said with a smile that she was sure. Sun-ah had thought about everything deeply and added that she has always believed in her and will always believe in her. Ja-young then turned to Baekjun, informing him that this was the end of her promised training in fist techniques officially. She thought for a moment, her gaze serious, as if she were about to say something else. Something important. Jaeyeon reminded her that it was just over a month until young Master Yu Tae-ran, the clan's main heir, returned. She directly asked Baekjun, because he too was now willing to claim the position of the head of the Holy Sword clan, wasn't he? The instructor gently touched his arm, emphasizing that it was now too late to turn back. The path was chosen. She warned that none of the older siblings would leave him alone since he had already shown his teeth, his strength. Baekjun asked with a slight chuckle, did she really think he would do the same as Yu Kang-ho and join someone else's faction? Jaeyeon nodded contentedly, admitting that she seemed to be worried for absolutely no reason at all. She added that if young Master Yu Jung-min and young Madam Yu Ri-an were still alive, things would have been much more complicated. Jaeyeon mentioned that young Mistress Yu Jung-an was especially attached to young Master Yu Jung-min. Baekjun remembered her grief. Jo Jun-won seriously told Baekjun that the other heirs will definitely not get off his back now, seeing him as a threat. Ja-young advised to be especially wary of Yu Dae-ran and Yu Jung-an, as they are both very eager to take over as clan head. Baekjun calmly replied that he was well aware of this, thinking to himself that he knew their ambitions far better than anyone else. Jae-young praised Baekjun for his good training results, saying it was an honor to teach him. He thanked her. Baekjun looked thoughtfully into the distance. He remembered Jae-young, Yu Jung-min, and Yu Ri-an, who were already dead. Officially, it was claimed that the cause of their deaths was an accident, but Baekjun knew the truth. It was a blatant lie. Yu Dae-ran, his ruthless older brother, killed them both when they stated their ambitions, and then cold-bloodedly hushed up the tragedy. His brother had tried to kill him, Baekjun too, even though he wasn't a competitor. Now that he had shown his strength, he was definitely Yu Dae-ran's #1 target. He realized that he needed to become much, much stronger in order to survive and stand up to his older brother when he returned. When he returned to his chambers, he saw his personal servant, Choi Seung-min, who excitedly asked if the young master had returned. Baekjun and Han Sung-ah, who was standing next to him, turned around at the voice, both looking a little surprised or puzzled by his appearance.